10 minutes. That's how long it takes to decide who belongs in first class. Seat 2 amperes gleamed beneath the cabin, lights white leather, brushed aluminum, and the faint sterile scent of lemon polish. A lull of quiet luxury hung in the air, disturbed only by the hum of air conditioning and the distant clatter of boarding bags in the back. Kesha Thompson adjusted the blanket around her 6-month-old daughter Zoe. The baby's breath came in tiny, rhythmic hiccups against her chest, her fists curling instinctively in the fabric of her mother's blouse. The soft hum of the engines vibrated through Kesha's arms like a restless heartbeat. From the galley, flight attendant Sandra Mitchell watched her. That tight, courteous smile, that corporate smile, never touched her eyes. Her navy uniform was immaculate. Her badge gleamed, and her tone, when it came, was sharpened by years of practiced authority. "Ma'am," she said, her voice low enough to sound polite, but loud enough for others to hear. "You'll need to keep the infant quiet before boarding completes." Kesha looked up, exhausted rather than angry. "I'm doing my best." "She's teething." Mitchell's expression didn't soften. "Then maybe economy would have been more comfortable for both of you." A few passengers chuckled, the sound small but cruel. The man in 2B didn't look up from his phone. He merely smirked. The elderly woman across the aisle adjusted her pearls, muttering something about standards going downhill. Judgment thickened the air like humidity. Kesha took a slow breath through her nose. The recycled air felt dry in her throat, metallic. She could feel the eyes sharp, assessing, already forming a verdict. She looked down at the boarding pass resting on her lap. "Mrs. K. Thompson, C2. A. Gold status elite." The letters looked absurdly formal for how small she suddenly felt. Zoe whimpered once, twice, then broke into a cry. It wasn't loud, but in that cabin of curated calm, it might as well have been a siren. Phones lifted instantly. "See," someone whispered, "you pay for first class. You expect peace." A red light from a nearby phone camera blinked like an accusation. Kesha adjusted Zoe gently, whispering a lullaby, an old Carolina melody her grandmother used to hum while folding laundry in the summer heat. The sound was soft, steady, and almost sacred against the mechanical hum of the plane. The child quieted, but the judgment didn't. Mitchell leaned closer, perfume sharp and expensive. "Ma'am, if you can't manage your child, we'll have to ask you to deplane until boarding is finished." Kesha's reply was quiet, but the steadiness of it caught the attendant off guard. "She's not a disturbance, ma'am. She's 6 months old. She cries because that's what babies do." Behind Mitchell, another attendant snorted, "We'll be here all day if we start explaining biology." The intercom chimed overhead. "Flight crew, final boarding begin. 10 minutes to takeoff." The phrase echoed through Kesha's chest like a countdown. 10 minutes to silence. 10 minutes to judgment. Or 10 minutes to something she couldn't yet name. Her phone buzzed. A brief flash of the caller ID Skylink Executive Office, before she declined it and slipped the device back into her bag. Mitchell's eyes caught the motion. "Who's calling you?" "Ma'am, all devices should be in airplane mode. Just work," Kesha said, smiling faintly. "Work." Mitchell arched a brow. "What kind of work requires a phone call right before takeoff?" Kesha looked her straight in the eye. "The kind that keeps planes in the air for a heartbeat." Mitchell hesitated. Then she laughed loud. "Performative. Right. And I'm the Secretary of Transportation." A ripple of laughter moved through the cabin. That sound, the shared, polite cruelty of strangers, was always worse than shouting. Kesha's lips pressed together. She looked at Zoe instead, brushed a fingertip across the baby's cheek, and whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart. They just don't know better." Across the aisle, A college-aged passenger whispered into her phone camera. "TikTok. Y'all, drama in first class. This flight attendant's losing it on a mom with a baby." Hearts flickered on her screen. Comments began scrolling. Probably deserved it. Why can't people control their kids? If she's in first class, she's probably scamming. Kesha didn't look up, but she could feel it, the audience growing. Her private moment of motherhood had become public entertainment. Mitchell clicked her radio. "Captain Williams, I've got a non-compliant passenger in 2 amperes. Enfant disturbance. Refusal to follow crew instructions." The voice from the cockpit was calm and male. "Handle it. Sandra. No delays." That word "handle" felt like a sentence. Mitchell turned back, eyes narrowing. "You heard the captain? Either quiet her down or step off. We're not holding this flight for you. You're talking about my daughter, not an engine part," Kesha replied evenly. The businessman in 2B looked up at last. "Some of us have connections to make, miss. Try a little consideration." Mitchell crossed her arms. "See, ma'am. Everyone else agrees. You're disturbing the cabin." Kesha reached for her carry-on with careful precision, her hands trembling only slightly. Inside were bottles, diapers, wipes, and buried beneath a folded baby blanket, a glint of platinum. She pushed it deeper before anyone could see. Her phone buzzed again. "Marcus T." She pressed decline. "Still ignoring me?" Mitchell asked, almost gloating. "You really think that's wise? Do you really think you know who you're talking to?" Kesha asked quietly. The stillness that followed was electric. The college student whispered into her phone, "Oh my God, did y'all hear that? She's like way too calm." Zoe had fallen asleep against her mother's shoulder, her tiny hand wrapped around Kesha's finger like a lifeline. The cabin, though full, felt sterile and empty. No one met her eyes. They just watched. Mitchell broke the silence with an exaggerated sigh. "All right, we'll handle this properly." She keyed her radio again. Code yellow. First class, passenger with infant refusing to comply. Kesha's lips moved. Barely a whisper. Always the code before the truth. The phone buzzed again. Another text preview. Lighting the screen. Merger announcement confirmed. 20 PM est Skylink legal ready. The words glowed faintly before the screen dimmed. She looked down at Zoe, brushed the child's curls away from her damp forehead, and murmured, "Almost there, baby. Just a few more minutes." Through the oval window, streaks of rain traced the glass like veins of silver. Each drop caught the light of the tarmac, glittering, sliding, vanishing. The world outside was waiting to move. Inside, time had congealed into scrutiny. Behind her, whispers gathered. She used someone else's ticket, probably one of those scams. People like that always play the victim. People like that, it was always there. The quiet racism dressed in etiquette. The social distance measured in class and color. Kesha's chest tightened. She'd survived boardrooms full of executives who underestimated her. Investors who talked around her instead of to her. But here, stripped of title and context, she was just another inconvenience in their curated world of order. She looked down at Zoe, who had fallen into a fragile sleep, her tiny cheek pressed against the curve of Kesha's neck. "You don't even know yet," Kesha whispered, her voice trembling, "what the world will do to you for looking like me." Mitchell reappeared, brisk and formal, ground securities on standby. "Ma'am, you'll be deplaned before departure." "On what grounds?" Kesha asked. "Failure to comply. Disruption. Disrespect." "You slapped me," Kesha said. Mitchell blinked, her mask of professionalism cracking for the first time. "That's absurd." Kesha's eyes moved slowly toward the passengers still recording. "Check their phones." Mitchell's mouth opened, then shut again. You can't prove anything. Maybe not yet. The faint red dot blinked again on the college girl's phone recording. Documenting. Judging. The captain's voice boomed over the intercom. Flight crew. Prepare for clearance. We leave in 7. Mitchell smiled tightly. You'll be gone before then. Kesha adjusted Zoe's blanket, kissed her forehead, and whispered, they have no idea who they're removing. The hum of the engines deepened. The air felt charged, like the moment before a storm. And as the cabin lights dimmed for takeoff, Kesha's reflection in the window caught her own eyes steady, unblinking, unafraid. 10 minutes to take off. 10 minutes until the world learns who she really is. That's what the intercom promised, and what the cabin seemed determined to deny her a quiet countdown to movement. Instead, the air inside first class thickened like steam gathering on glass, fogging what people believed about themselves. The aisle glowed a sterile runway of LEDs. Ice clinked somewhere behind the curtain. Metal buckles nuzzled against armrests. And everywhere, the soft crackle of radios and the shutterless, relentless staring of cameras. Kesha loosened her shoulder to let Zoe breathe deeper. The baby had returned to those tiny hiccup breaths, the kind that made a mother's heart nerve along with them. Sandra Mitchell planted herself just enough into the aisle to own it. Her smile had firmed into policy. "Ma'am," she said, pitching her voice the way people pitch slogans, "we value all our guests, but compliance isn't optional." Kesha kept her tone sanded smooth. "I haven't refused a safety instruction. I asked for a moment to—" "What you asked," Mitchell cut in, "was to ignore crew directives. The cabin is already delayed." She turned, letting her silver wings catch the light like proof. "Captain Williams, pair your last. We need to proceed." Her radio answered with a fast buzz. Someone moving, someone deciding. A couple of phones in row, one tilted up to frame the exchange. Comments, muted by sound-off settings, streamed like rainwater bubbles popping across small screens. "Kick her off. No kids in first." Finally, a crew with backbone. Behind Kesha, a voice she hadn't heard yet. A baritone dipped in old bourbon spoke carefully, like someone testing ice. "Flight attendant, forgive me, but the baby's quiet now." Mitchell didn't turn. "Sir? Thank you, but this is a compliance issue." Kesha breathed once more through her nose. "She's fed. She'll sleep." "She'll sleep is not a policy," Mitchell said, and the small chuckle that followed landed like chalk dust, harmless seeming. But everywhere, the college kid with the phone nail polish chipped, hair in a knotted bun narrated in a whisper, "Okay, my viewers, now she's pretending to be calm because she knows she's on camera." It wasn't even hatred, Kesha thought. It was appetite. The cabin didn't want an outcome. It wanted a show. From the galley curtain, the other attendant guy, the one who'd snorted, peeked in and then vanished again. The curtain moved, like a stage wing swallowing an actor. Mitchell towed the bag at Kesha's feet, a tiny nudge, but meant to read as patience running out. "We can do this the easy way." Kesha drew the bag closer with her ankle. Her thumb grazed the zipper pull and found the edge of the platinum cool. Solid. Certain she didn't take it out. Not yet. The intercom thrummed. 6 minutes to departure. Final checks. 6 minutes. The number worked like a spell on the cabin's collective pulse. People adjusted watches. Someone checked a calendar square on a tablet. The businessman in 2B finally spoke without looking at Kesha. "Captain's not going to miss our slot. Don't make this worse." She'd heard that sentence 100 ways in 100 rooms. "Don't make this worse by insisting on being seen." The baby fluttered, exhaled, softened into sleep. Kesha angled her body so Zoe's head rested more comfortably against the soft inside of her elbow. The weight was small, but it was a creed. Mitchell's eyes flicked to the child and then away. Like compassion was a hallway, she refused to walk down. "Ma'am, let's stand up. We'll continue this at the gate." Keisha didn't move. On what grounds? Documented disruption. Refusal to comply. "My hands are full of my daughter, not défiance." "That's not how crew notes read," Mitchell said briskly, already scribbling on her tablet with a stylus, whose tip squeaked against the screen. The digital sound was a quiet insult. Bureaucracy writing over a human face. Something changed in the temperature of the aisle. A new figure filled it height. Shoulders. Brass on the cuffs. Captain Derek Williams arrived with the unhurried authority of a man who'd been obeyed longer than he could count. He didn't look at Kesha first. He looked at Mitchell quick, assessing, collegial. Then his gaze traveled, took in the baby, took in the phones, took in the rain tick-ticking the window like an impatient metronome. "Ms. Mitchell," he said, "your assessment." Mitchell didn't waste a beat. Non compliant passenger. Ongoing disturbance. Crew direction ignored. Williams nodded once, already convinced by the cadence. He turned an inch toward Keisha. Enough to make it count as listening, not enough to make it count as seeing. "Ma'am, under federal regulations, you're required to follow crew instructions without delay." Kesha met his eyes. She wasn't harder than him. She was steadier. "I will follow any safety instruction. I asked for a minute to feed my daughter and verify the paperwork you refused to look at." A thread of surprise tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Verify what paperwork?" You could almost hear it spool. Mitchell answered instead. "She showed a boarding pass. That doesn't explain her attitude." Williams sighed like a judge picking up a gavel. "We can't litigate tone. Ms. Mitchell." He looked back to Kesha. "What paperwork?" Kesha nodded toward her lap with her chin, careful not to jostle Zoe. The boarding pass lay there. Gold status. Code bold beside her name. Williams glanced at it, then away the glance of a man who'd glanced at 1,000,000 boarding passes and saved his real attention for instruments and weather. The baby disturbed the cabin. Mitchell said, "That's all in the notes." "Is she disturbing it now?" a voice asked, same bourbon baritone from behind. Silence pooled. People re-angled their phones. The elderly woman in the pearls sucked in an offended breath, as if the question itself was an insult to order. Williams held out a hand, palms open. Peacemaker, but his tone stayed final. "Ma'am, to avoid escalation, I'm asking you to gather your belongings and step off with my team. Rebooking will be provided." Kesha felt it how lightly the heavy things were spoken. To avoid escalation, to avoid the mess of a story. She went still the way a diver goes, still one elongated breath before the cold. "My belongings," she said quietly, "are a sleeping child and a record button." The college girl gasped. "She said it. She's recording." Mitchell rolled her shoulders back, irritation flaring. "Recording in the cabin without consent violates." "It violates nothing." The man behind Kesha cut in. "We're allowed to document public interactions with airline staff." He spoke like he knew the rule book, like he'd paid for it in fees and hours. Mitchell's jaw twitched. "Sir, you're welcome to file a complaint at the gate." "Already drafting," he said, and the small clack of a laptop made the statement true. 5 minutes. The intercom said, soft as doom. Williams turned his wrist, checked the time, weighed it against a slot, an impatient tower, a weather cell sliding somewhere on a radar. It was a captain's math minutes plus pressure divided by authority. "Air marshals," he said without raising his voice. They came as shadows, first plain clothes, neutral shoes, the stillness of men trained to be the quietest thing in chaos. The aisle widened for them like a throat swallowing. Agent Rodriguez took the lead. He had a face that didn't assume which in that cabin read as resistance. The other, Johnson, scanned hands, instead of faces, counting fingers, measuring threat. "Captain," Rodriguez said. Williams kept it clinical. "Escort the passenger and child off the aircraft. Minimal disturbance. We'll resolve at the gate." "Reason?" Rodriguez asked, not out of defiance, but out of protocol. His voice had the careful curiosity of a man who'd learned what lawsuits cost. "Non-compliance," Williams said. "Crew notes on disturbance." Rodriguez's gaze flicked to Zoe sleeping, slack-mouthed, milk-drunk. He flicked to Kesha's eyes, clear, dry, not the sheen of panic he knew too well. He looked at Mitchell, her stance a little too forward, like a sprinter in the blocks for a race she wanted to run. "Ma'am," Rodriguez said, gentle as a bank lobby, "we're going to step off. You can bring the diaper bag." Kesha reached an inch deeper into the carry-on, touched the metal again. She thought of every time she'd waited too long, swallowed too much, chosen composure over correction. She thought of her daughter's skin, soft, brown, luminous like her grandmother's hands in the sun. She let the zipper go. "Not yet." 4.5 minutes, Williams said. "Because this is what the clock says, Captain, to do. Turn people into time." He reached for the intercom. "Ground. We may need to return to—" And that was when Sandra Mitchell performed authority. It was quick. It was a flick. Kesha turned a fraction to angle Zoe's head, and Mitchell's open palm met Kesha's cheek with a sound as clean as a snapped pencil. The cabin inhaled in one long thread. Even the lights seemed to pause inside their housings. It didn't hurt the way movies pretend, no cinematic crackle of pain. It bloomed, instead, a heat circle blooming under the skin, a red handprint under the brown, a memory her nerves wouldn't forget. Sibiral phones, previously nestled just low enough to deny intention, shot up to a courtroom height. The college girl forgot to whisper. The word "oh my God" escaped her in a single, breathless rope. Baby Zoe startled, the way infants startle, arms shooting into the air, eyes scrunching, mouth gathering itself into a storm. The cry came out like a siren, turned inward, pain and confusion, bottled inside a throat as small as a thumb. Rodriguez snapped his attention to Mitchell. Johnson's hand skated toward his waistband, and then away. This wasn't that kind of threat, but his body didn't trust that yet. Mitchell, parlez now, blinked at her own hand, as if it had acted on the wrong script. Then she recovered. Fast, with the shameless speed of someone accustomed to winning the benefit of the doubt, she lunged. Mitchell said, "Reflex." Kesha didn't flinch anymore. She pressed her cheek against Zoe's hair, the baby's cry muffled, small sobs hiccuping into the fabric. "No," she said evenly. "We both know what that was." The cabin supplied its own chorus. Finally, the Pearl woman said, though her voice had lost some swagger, "Someone doing their job, unbelievable." Someone else murmured, a word that tried to be neutral and failed. The man behind Kesha typed faster. His keys sounded like punctuation. "Live post," he muttered. "Time stamped. Witnessed assault." Williams went the color of old paper. He looked at Mitchell, and you could see the gears slide. Crew unity versus legal exposure. Schedule versus scandal. Authority versus accountability. He made the old choice, the one that built this script. "Passengers, please settle," he said, voice deeper. "We're addressing a safety concern." Rodriguez didn't move. His stillness was the quiet kind, 1 millimeter before intervention. "Captain, we need to slow this down," he said softly. 3 minutes. The intercom said, 3 minutes to decide if a mother's face is a policy. Mitchell found her radio again, fingers trembling now barely. But there, ground security. Code upgrade. Immediate removal. Passenger resisting. Resisting. Kesha repeated, "I'm holding a baby." The college kid's camera shook. Her breath shook with it. She slapped her. She slapped her. She whispered to her viewers, 1,000 tiny rooms opening across the map to swallow her words. Kesha could have stood then. She could have walked, let the gate swallow her. The complaint forms pile up, the apology coupons printed out like absolution. She could have done what 1,000 women did every day, folded, filed, moved on. Zoe's sob laughed. One of those baby sounds, an accidental bubble between tears, and tucked her face back into Kesha's neck. Kesha looked at the air marshal, whose face didn't assume. "Mr. Rodriguez," she said quietly, and the name startled him. Most passengers didn't know it. "Tell me, what do your protocols say about crew-initiated force on a non-violent passenger holding an infant?" His blink was all the answer she needed. "Exactly," she said. She lifted her phone from her thigh. The screen lit her cheekbone where the heat had already risen. A notification pulsed, green against white. Skylink Executive Office. "Missed call 2. Another text preview slid across the top. "Merger PR in position. 200 p.m. Est." Mitchell leaned forward, trying to catch the words. "Who are you calling?" "Nobody can override." Kesha tapped one contact. The name didn't read CEO or husband. It read home. She pressed speaker. The first ring hadn't finished before the voice answered. A voice that carried boardrooms and bargaining tables inside it. A voice that grew velvet when it said her name. "Hey," he said. "Where are you?" "In first," she said, keeping the softness. She stroked Zoe's hair with the same hand that held the phone. "We're having a little delay." Something in the silence on the other end hardened. He hadn't needed the word "we" to sharpen him, but it did. "Tell me the flight number." 847, she said. "Nashville to Atlanta." Rodriguez looked toward Williams, as if to say, this is the part where it stops being simple. Johnson had already started scanning the cabin for badges, for insignia, for anything that might explain the rope of command he could feel tightening. "Put me on speaker," the voice said. "You are," Kesha said. He exhaled once. It sounded like the slide of a heavy door. "Then this is Marcus Thompson." The name moved through the cabin like heat under paint. No one reacted dramatically, but small things, rippled eyebrows ticked, phones tilted. The Pearl woman's chin lifted, not sure whether to sneer or smile. Williams frowned. Marcus Thompson meant what? He had a board memo memory for names. But under pressure, even good pilots lose one instrument. "What's the situation with my wife and daughter and 2 amperes?" Marcus asked, every syllable clean. Mitchell's mouth open, closed, opened. "Sir," Williams began, throat dry. "We have a crew-initiated assault recorded by multiple passengers," Marcus said, as if reading an altimeter. "A ground delay, a live audience, and approximately 3 minutes to decide whether this ship belongs to the people who staff it or the people who own it." Phones jumped in hands. The college kid's mouth fell open. "Wait," she mouthed to her viewers, scrambling to flip her camera. "Wait, wait, wait. Did he just say wife?" Mitchell actually stepped backward, a half-inch slide that said everything. Rodriguez lowered his gaze, not out of shame, but out of calculation, scanning for how quickly to pivot without breaking his oath. The intercom stayed silent, but every second banged its drum across the LED aisle. Kesha didn't raise her voice. She never had to. "Captain," she said, almost gently, "we can do this the easy way. Verify the ID you didn't want to see. Listen to your own audio, or keep performing." Williams stared at the phone like it might detonate. He looked at Mitchell, at Rodriguez, at the cabin of witnesses who had needed no invitation to become the court. He reached for his radio, because even in new storms, men steered the way they always had: called the tower, widen the circle, dilute the choice. Marcus saved him the trouble. "Captain Williams," he said, This aircraft will not move today until I say so. And since your crew chose performance over procedure, here's the new procedure. Everyone who put their hands on my wife steps back. Now, no one moved for a beat. The plane itself seemed to lean, everything suspended over the drop of what came next. Rodriguez took a single, visible step back. Johnson followed. The businessman in 2B finally looked at Kesha. Actually looked, not through her, not around her, and found his mouth opening to say something that wouldn't help anyone. He shut it. Mitchell's hand hovered near her radio again, but for once, she didn't seem to know which script to pick. The captain's authority had lived in clocks and checklists. Now it sat, suddenly, inside a voice on a speakerphone. He glanced at the window, where rain still stitched the glass with silver threads. He thought of slots. He thought of news trucks. He thought of the way a name can close a sky. 2 minutes. Someone whispered. Kesha turned her face, so the hot print of Mitchell's palm caught the overhead light, not to dramatize, to document. Her eyes were steady. The baby's breath ticked against her collarbone like small, stubborn metronome notes. "Captain," she said softly, "your move." The cabin held its breath. Out on the tarmac, a flash bar lit red-blue against the gray. Inside, every camera found her cheek, above the soft hum of the engines and the softer hum of 1,000 people on 1,000 phones. The sound everyone would remember, the one that would replay under news anchors' voices and talk radio sermons and boardroom. Apologies wasn't the crack of the slap. It was the quiet, recorded sentence that followed. "This is Marcus Thompson, Chief Executive of Skylink," the phone said, calm as a locked door. "Step away from my family, or step out of my company." 1 minute, and counting. 2 minutes. That's all it took for the cabin to become a courtroom without walls. Phones were held higher now, angled for light, for clarity, for proof. Every face in first class had chosen a side, though no one would admit it out loud. The hum of the engines was the low murmur of a jury, deliberating in real time. Kesha sat still, Zoe asleep again against her chest, one hand on her daughter's back, the other resting near her phone. Her cheek still burned from the slap, the outline of Mitchell's fingers faint but undeniable. Captain Williams hovered near the cockpit door, his authority unraveling like thread caught on metal. He knew the name now, Marcus Thompson, CEO. The man who could ground fleets and fire careers with a sentence. Mitchell stood frozen, color draining from her face, still gripping her radio like it might rewind the last 5 minutes. "Captain." Marcus's voice came through the speaker, each word precise, deliberate. "Confirm for me who authorized physical contact with my wife." Silence thickened. Rodriguez, the air marshal, cleared his throat. "Sir, we witnessed the altercation. The crew initiated contact." Mitchell's voice cracked. She was non-compliant. "I followed protocol." "Protocol doesn't include assaulting a passenger with an infant." Marcus snapped, his tone no longer icy. It was surgical. "You've just created a federal liability on camera." The elderly woman in pearls shifted uneasily, clutching her purse. "I'm sure it was a misunderstanding." Kesha looked at her, not with anger, but with something quieter. Heavy disappointment. "No, Mom, it's exactly what it looked like." The college student's phone trembled in her hand as the live stream count ticked upward. 26. Ling ling ling. Sensiba. Ling ling ling. Wusar. 000 viewers. Rodriguez took a half step forward. Voice calm. "Captain, for the record, we're in an active investigation zone now. Recommend pausing all passenger movements until the call concludes." Williams swallowed. His voice, when it came, was flat, procedural. Copy. Marcus's voice softened slightly, directed at Keisha. Are you and Zoe unharmed? Keisha exhaled slowly. We're fine now. She's asleep. Zoe stirred slightly, her small hand gripping a lock of her mother's hair. The image, soft baby fingers against a red-marked cheek, was already being captured by dozens of lenses. Mitchell tried again, her voice rising with desperation. Sir, I didn't know who she was. Marcus didn't miss a beat, and you shouldn't have needed to. That line hit like a gavel. Even the murmurs stopped. The businessman in 2B, who'd earlier demanded quiet, now shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting away from Keisha's. Keisha's voice, calm but measured, filled the cabin. People always say, I didn't know, but they never ask what they thought they knew. Mitchell's jaw trembled. You were just assuming. Keisha interrupted, not unkindly but with precision, that I didn't belong here, that my baby made me less worthy of comfort, that my skin explained the seat I sat in. Someone behind them whispered. She said it. Marcus's tone sharpened again. Captain Williams, your crew's behavior today has crossed several lines: legal, procedural, moral. This flight is grounded, permanently. Do not move that aircraft until federal aviation investigators arrive. Rodriguez nodded once, relief hidden beneath professionalism. Understood, sir. I'll coordinate security containment. Marcus, Keisha said softly, it's done. Don't make it worse. Her voice carried a steadiness that silenced even the live stream commentary. It wasn't pleading, it was commanding through gentleness. Mitchell, parlez now. Turn to Keisha, please. I can explain. Keisha tilted her head slightly. Can you? Because I've had to explain my existence since I was old enough to hold a boarding pass. Williams's radio crackled. Ground 2 Flight 847. We're receiving reports of a corporate override order. Marcus' voice stayed calm. Affirmative. This aircraft is under executive review. All communication will now go through my office. Rodriguez exchanged glances with his partner. That's a first, he muttered. Keisha brushed her daughter's hair back gently. Zoe, we're almost done. The college student whispered into her mic. This is wild. She's just calm, like she knew all along. And in a way, she had, for months. Keisha had watched discrimination cases buried under non-disclosure agreements. Families humiliated, mothers removed, names erased. She had told Marcus this would happen again, and now, here it was live. Undeniable, irreversible. Rodriguez's earpiece crackled with dispatch chatter. Sir, national media requesting confirmation of incident. CNN. NBC, local affiliates. He looked at Williams. You want to handle that? Williams closed his eyes briefly. No. Keisha's phone buzzed again, an incoming video call. She turned the screen outward so everyone could see. The Skylink executive boardroom filled the display, dozens of faces, pale and furious, blinking under fluorescent lights. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus said, voice echoing through both the cabin and the boardroom feed. You are all witnessing a case study in systemic bias, negligence, and corporate failure. This is not a PR event. This is accountability. Mitchell took a step back, shaking her head. This isn't fair. Keisha rose slowly, careful not to wake Zoe. Neither was your hand, she said simply. The businessman in 2B lowered his phone. Ma'am, I'm sorry. I didn't. Keisha didn't let him finish. You didn't see me. That's the point. The cabin door hissed open as federal marshals boarded, their cameras rolling, badges glinting. Captain William, one said briskly, by federal directive, this aircraft is under investigation. All passengers must remain seated until cleared. The elderly woman in pearls clutched her necklace, I didn't mean anything by it, she murmured. Kesha looked at her, not angry, just tired. You never do. Rodriguez turned toward the passengers. Folks, keep your phones steady. They'll want this footage preserved. Marcus's voice boomed one final time through the speaker. To everyone watching this, discrimination thrives in silence. Today, silence lost. The line clicked dead. Outside, rain streaked the tarmac. Inside, the cabin buzzed with a different kind of electricity. The sound of collective realization. The college student looked into her phone camera, her voice trembling as she said, "This is going to change everything." And for once, the internet agreed. The cabin doors hadn't even reopened when the world decided who the villain was. By the time federal marshals escorted Keisha, Zoe, and the trembling crew down the jet bridge, hashtags had already chosen sides. Skylink scandal, entitled Mother, Justice for Sandra, Flight 847. Every angle of the slap was online. Someone had slowed the video, looping the instant where Mitchell's palm struck Kesha's cheek, frame by frame, like it was a sporting highlight. Commentators dissected it like analysts after a game. Was the slap justified? Did she provoke it? Maybe she said something off camera. The truth, as always, was buried under noise. Kesha didn't speak to the reporters crowding the corridor. She just kept walking, Zoe's head buried against her shoulder, one arm shielding the baby from the popping flashes. Her expression never changed, steady, silent, unreadable. The silence drove people insane. On the ground level, a security officer guided her into a private terminal lounge. The room was cold, walls paneled in blonde wood and brushed steel. Cameras weren't allowed, but whispers still followed her in flight attendants from other crews pretending to grab coffee. A janitor lingering too long by the door. Mitchell and Captain Williams sat on the opposite side of the room, faces pale and drawn, surrounded by investigators. Marcus's legal team had arrived already, 3 people in dark suits, briefcases humming with power. Kesha sat near the window, gently rocking Zoe. The baby slept, oblivious to the digital war raging outside. Across the tarmac, news van clustered like vultures. Screens inside the lounge showed the live coverage. Breaking news: Skylink Airways under investigation after viral video shows flight attendant striking passenger holding infant. Sources confirm the passenger is CEO Marcus Thompson's wife. Viewers divided. Some call it a setup. Others say it exposes systemic bias in airline culture. Stock price drops 8% in after-hours trading. Kesha watched the ticker scroll beneath her own name. Mrs. Kesha Thompson, passenger, Flight 847. The word passenger felt wrong. She wasn't one anymore. She was evidence. One of the federal investigators, a woman with tired eyes and an FBI badge clipped to her lapel, approached quietly. Mrs. Thompson, we'll need your statement for the report. Kesha nodded once. I'll give it, but only when my attorney's here. The investigator hesitated. Understood. We just need to contain the media narrative. Contain it. Kesha looked up. It's already global. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the tarmac gleamed wet and raw under floodlights. Every drop reflected a camera flash. At that exact moment, on the other side of the country, trending dashboards were melting. The TikTok stream hit 5.7 million views in 4 hours. Major anchors debated tone and race on live television. Would the response have been the same if this were a white mother? She was calm. Yes, but maybe too calm, almost rehearsed. Is this really about race or about class? The college student who filmed the original clip, Jenna Chen, was being swarmed by interview requests. She hadn't slept. Her voice cracked on a live stream. I didn't even realize who she was. I just filmed it 'cause it looked wrong. Her video comments were a war zone. Hero. Liar. Plant. She's playing the race card. She finally turned off notifications after someone posted her home address. Marcus Thompson hadn't left the command room in 6 hours. The walls flickered with feeds, news, streams, social media dashboards, legal documents updating in real time. His voice was measured, clipped. Confirm, internal communication lockdown. No employee statements, no anonymous posts, no union leaks. His PR director nodded. Pal, we're drafting an official statement. We'll position this as. Marcus raised a hand. We're not positioning, we're admitting. Silence fell. He turned toward the largest screen where the freeze frame of the slap was paused mid-motion. That image will define this company unless we do something no airline has ever done before. Tell the truth. Someone in legal shifted uncomfortably. Sir, that truth could cost millions in settlements. Marcus didn't look away from the screen. Then it's still cheaper than lying. Captain Williams rubbed his temples as the investigator replayed the cabin audio. Every word cut deeper than the slap itself. Mitchell people, like you always try to upgrade illegally. Mitchell, your baby daddy isn't going to save you from federal law. Each line landed like a hammer. Mitchell flinched visibly. It sounded different in context, she whispered. Kesha's attorney arrived, a woman named Amara Lewis. Sharp suit, sharper eyes. She set her tablet down with a quiet click and looked directly at Mitchell. Context, Amara said softly. The context is federal law. The context is Title 49, Section 46504. Interference with passenger safety. You struck a woman carrying an infant. Mitchell's hands shook. I was under stress. She wasn't. She was calm. Amara interrupted. You were not. The room went still. Captain Williams exhaled. Look, we've all had bad flights. People snap. Amara turned to him. Bad flights don't end with felony charges. Williams' face tightened. Kesha didn't speak. She just adjusted Zoe's blanket again. Eyes fixed on the horizon beyond the rain-streaked window. The sun was breaking through clouds now, pale, fragile, like something uncertain about showing up. By evening, talk shows had turned the incident into entertainment. Split-screen debates filled every network. Two pundits, one smirking, one furious. Maybe this is an overreaction. Everyone's too sensitive. She was assaulted holding a baby. What's the overreaction part? It's not about race. It's about entitlement. Right, because only certain people are allowed to be calm when attacked. Even the late report made a joke. Guess first class comes with free drama now. The audience laughed. Kesha watched the clip later that night and almost smiled. Not because it was funny, but because pain always sold better when packaged for applause. At Skylink, panic met bureaucracy. Mid-level managers scrambled to delete old emails. HR teams reviewed prior complaints, and the word bias suddenly became radioactive. Employees, who'd once praised Mitchell's firmness with passengers, now sent quiet messages of regret. Didn't know she'd gone that far. She was always intense with minority travelers. Wish I'd spoken up. Wish I'd spoken up. Kesha had heard that phrase her entire career. It always came after the damage. Near midnight, Marcus finally video called her. His face looked carved from exhaustion. You okay? He asked. I'm fine, Kesha said, voice even. Zoe's asleep. You shouldn't have to be this calm. She smiled faintly. You shouldn't have to apologize for your company. He rubbed his eyes. It's not just a company anymore. It's a mirror, and the whole country's staring into it. For a moment, silence filled the space between them, intimate, fragile. the kind of silence that spoke louder than speeches. "Marcus," she said finally, "don't protect me. Protect the next woman this could happen to." His jaw tightened. "I'm not issuing a PR statement. I'm issuing reform. Public. Permanent. Undeniable." Kesha nodded. "Then do it fast, because right now, they're rewriting my story without me." By morning, the narrative flipped again. A wave of anonymous posts claimed the incident was staged, CEO's wife trying to make a point, she wanted attention. Reverse racism. Conspiracy accounts flooded feeds. Someone posted Kesha's old LinkedIn photo, overlaying text privilege in disguise. Others rallied in her defense, reposting the video with captions like, "Black motherhood is not a crime." The digital battlefield burned non-stop. Every frame of her face was weaponized, her composure, her silence, her restraint all twisted into proof of guilt or grace, depending on who was watching. Mitchell sat in her small apartment, blinds drawn, staring at her phone, voicemails stacked up, some from family, some from strangers. "You're a disgrace. I'd have slapped her too. Racist." Her husband's voice finally broke through the noise. "They're outside. Sandra?" "Reporters. You need to go." She slumped against the counter. 8 years of service. Gone. He hesitated. "You hit a mother on camera." She looked up sharply. "You think I meant to?" She looked at me like I didn't exist, like I was the problem. "That's what everyone says right before they become one," he replied quietly. Mitchell's breath hitched. For the first time, she realized she'd crossed a line that couldn't be negotiated. At noon, Marcus appeared live on every major network. The set was stark, no logos, no PR gloss, just him at a podium. "My name is Marcus Thompson," he began, voice even but hard. "I'm the CEO of Skylink Airways. Yesterday, my wife and daughter were assaulted by our own crew. You all saw it. There's no editing, no spin, no defense." A murmur rippled through the press. "This isn't about my family," he continued. "It's about a system that teaches employees to fear the wrong passengers, to confuse authority with superiority." He paused, letting the silence breathe. "As of this moment, Skylink suspends every employee involved pending federal investigation. We are launching the Thompson Standards Initiative, a permanent overhaul of training, accountability, and anti-discrimination protocols." A reporter shouted, "Sir, isn't that nepotism using your wife's case for reform?" Marcus's reply was surgical. "If holding people accountable for attacking a mother is nepotism, then maybe our morale compass needs recalibration." The room erupted with flashes and questions, but his words had already rewritten the narrative. Kesha watched the speech from home, Sue asleep beside her. The apartment was quiet, except for the faint hum of city traffic. She ran her fingers across the fading mark on her cheek. It no longer hurt, but it hadn't disappeared either. A reminder branded in skin and memory. Her phone buzzed with a message from Amara. "Federal investigators want to interview you tomorrow morning. Bring the card." Kesha typed back, "I will." Then she scrolled through her messages. Hundreds of them. Some from strangers offering support, some from women describing their own humiliations in airports, hospitals, offices. She read them all, one by one. Finally, she whispered to Zoe, "See, baby, every story like ours leaves a light on for someone else." Outside, in the dark sky, a single plane crossed overhead, its red beacon blinking steady, a reminder that even at 35,000 feet, someone's watching who gets to belong. The federal building on Charlotte Avenue looked like it had been poured from a single slab of gray. No banners, no flags flapping in moral wind, just concrete, glass, and the low hum of shielded security scanners. an architecture that said truth wasn't invited so much as processed. At 8:58 a.m., Kesha adjusted Zoe on her hip and stepped through the revolving door with attorney Amara Lewis at her side. The lobby's air smelled like cut stone and coffee, burned past caring. Reporters penned behind stanchions lifted microphones as if they were flowers or weapons, depending on who was holding them. Mrs. Thompson, did you stage the incident? Mrs. Thompson, what do you say to claims you refuse to cooperate? Mrs. Thompson, do you believe this was racially motivated? Keisha didn't break stride. A soft cap covered Zoe's hair, little bare ears bobbing with each step. The baby blinked at the fluorescent lights and made a tiny sound like a question. Kesha kissed her forehead. We're okay, she said. It wasn't an answer. It was a spell. Amara flashed her badge at security. FAA hearing. Conference A. They were waved through. Inside the elevator, silence was a dropped pin. Amara checked her tablet again. Scrolling through exhibits, we go first with your statement. Then Investigator Carter will walk through the preliminary report. After that, opposing counsel for the union speaks, then Rodriguez, then Williams, then Mitchell. Kesha watched the floors tick up, and the procedural twist. They promised the press to keep ratings high. Amara's mouth twitched. My money's on a malfunctioning camera or a mysteriously ambiguous policy memo. When institutions are cornered, they invent fog. Kesha nodded. Then we'll be a fan. The doors opened onto a corridor as featureless as a ledger. Conference A was at the end, its glass walls frosted to shoulder level. Beyond the blur of opaque glass, cameras hovered, red tally lights blinking like patient eyes. Inside, an oval table waited beneath lights that made everyone's pores look treacherous. Investigator Sarah Carter sat center, composed in the way of people who had learned to be unreadable for a living. A stenographer set her fingers on the keys like a pianist who hated music. Seats were labeled in discreet, unforgiving Helvetica. Amara guided Keisha to a chair. There was a clear acrylic crib beside it. Someone had thought that Keisha suspected. Someone wanted the optics of a mother testifying with her sleeping baby in frame. Power could be accidental. Optics never wear. Across the table, Captain Derek Williams looked older than he had 2 days ago. He wore a suit that didn't fit his posture. Sandra Mitchell sat next to a union attorney, tight bun, tighter mouth, the ghost of a uniform clinging to her spine. On the far side, Air Marshal Luis Rodriguez waited in plain clothes, hands folded, attention alert but inward. He looked like a man who had seen enough bad decisions dressed up as policy. A second row of seats held a different kind of power. Skylink's General Counsel David Park, a Department of Transportation liaison, a representative from the pilots' union, and, quietly devastating in her calm, Jenna Chen, the college student whose live stream had become a global X-ray. She looked smaller in real life, as if the camera had done the American thing and added size along with attention. She clutched a worn canvas backpack with stickers that said things like, "Be gentle. The world is heavy." Carter spoke into the microphone. We're on record. FAA Case 24-847. Investigator Sarah Carter presiding. The hearing will establish preliminary facts regarding the incident aboard Skylink Flight 847. The room adjusted itself to listening. Mrs. Thompson, Carter said, you may make your statement. Kesha breathed once, deep and low, the way voice coaches taught for courtrooms and boardrooms. Amara slid a page toward her. Kesha didn't look at it. My name is Keisha Thompson. I boarded Flight 847 with my 6-month-old daughter, Zoe. I sat in seat 2 amperes, to which my ticket entitled me. My baby cried, as babies do. A flight attendant escalated the situation. Instead of helping Bees, she struck me while I was holding my child. I remained calm because escalation hurts women like me more than it helps. I asked for verification. I was ignored. I asked to wait. I was threatened with removal. Then I made a phone call. Someone in the second row coughed, and it sounded like a punchline. Kesha continued. There's no version of the federal regulations where a slap is policy. There's no version of customer service where people like you is a script note. That's all. She didn't look at Mitchell. She didn't look at Williams. She looked at Zoe, asleep in the clear crib, as if the world were safe. Carter nodded. Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. For the record, we have cabin audio and multiple independent passenger videos. We'll authenticate individually. She turned to Jenna. Ms. Chen, thank you for appearing. Jenna swallowed. I didn't know it would go like this. It always goes like this. Amara murmured, not quite under her breath. Carter tapped a key. The speakers filled with the now familiar scrape of an intercom chime and a human voice weaponizing politeness. Control your screaming brat. The slap arrived like a gunshot in a church. A rustle, a collective intake of air, even in the room where everyone had heard it already. The sound landed fresh, faithless. Mitchell stared at the tabletop. Her union attorney scribbled something and slid it across. Mitchell didn't pick up the pen. Carter stopped the audio. We'll pause there. The panel has reviewed passenger videos. Ms. Mitchell, do you wish to make a preliminary statement? Mitchell's mouth opened, closed. When she spoke, it had the rhythm of a line she'd practiced and no longer believed. I was attempting to maintain order in first class. The child was disruptive. The mother refused instructions. I lightly touched her to get attention. David Park, the Skylink counsel, shifted like a man having an allergic reaction to perjury. Carter didn't blink. We'll let the audio characterize the lightness. Ms. Mitchell, you also said, people like you. Who is you? Mitchell's voice got smaller. People who cause trouble. People who think rules don't apply. And you determined that by what first impressions? Race. Child in arms. Carter's voice remained quiet. Surgical. Help me understand your criteria. Mitchell's attorney interjected. Investigator Carter, we object to the tone. My client is under enormous stress. Amara leaned in. Voice velvet over blade. As was the infant, Williams smoothed his tie. We're losing focus. The issue is timeliness. We needed to push back on schedule. Crew followed on-time departure protocols. Carter turned. Captain Williams, are you introducing timeliness as a safety factor or a business metric? Williams blinked. Both. A small, involuntary sound escaped Rodriguez. It might have been a laugh, and it might have been the body's refusal to swallow one. Carter clicked another tab. We've obtained internal Skylink kites. Excuse me, memos. In the month prior to flight 847, station management issued a zero-delay directive, emphasizing removal over de-escalation for any situation that threatened departure slots, quoting, when in doubt, deplane and debate later. The room's temperature dropped 5 degrees on paper. Park cleared his throat. That memo predates Mr. Thompson's CEO tenure and has been rescinded after or before the incident. Carter asked. Park paused. After. There it was, the twist the press had been promised, except messier and more plausible. Sandra Mitchell was human error at the pointy end of a corporate spear. Amara tapped her screen and projected a second document. We've also obtained dispatch audio from the captain's channel. At DG minutes to departure, operations radioed. Handle it. No delays. 5 minutes later, security was requested for removal. Williams stiffened. That's standard. Standard? Amara repeated, without inflection. For removal first, verification later. Carter looked at Rodriguez. Agent Rodriguez, your statement said you were responding to a crew report of a disruptive passenger. Did you independently verify before escalation? Rodriguez folded his hands tighter. Ma'am, our protocol is to treat crew reports as credible until contradicted. We do attempt-independent assessment. Here he touched his chest unconsciously, as if still wearing the badge. I saw no direct threat. I advised waiting. I was overruled by the captain. Williams leaned forward. We didn't have time to sit in a philosophy seminar. We had a slot, and a mother, Amara said, and a camera. A shadow of a smile crossed Carter's face. We'll take a 5-minute recess. In the hallway, air tasted like old vent filters. Amara checked her watch. They're circling the drain towards systemic fault. Good. Kesha stood by the window, watching a plane wheel away from the gate. The tail cone flashed in the sun like a seal on a letter sent before anyone had time to proofread. A slot, she said. My daughter is a slot. Amara's hand was warm on her arm. Today, your composure is an indictment. Tomorrow, it's policy. Jenna approached, backpack hugged to her stomach. Mrs. Thompson, can I? Her face folded with apology. I'm sorry, she blurted. I posted it because it was wrong, and now there are people saying I edited it. My mom's getting calls. I don't know how to be in this. Kesha turned, really looked at the girl, barely 20, eyes swollen from too little sleep and too much significance. What you did was witness, Kesha said. The world punishes witnesses because without you, denial is easier. Don't apologize for truth. Jenna's shoulders eased by a measurable degree. I keep refreshing. It's like I can't stop. Put the phone down, Kesha said. Drink water. Breathe. Let the adults do the next part. Jenna laughed. Wet. You say adults, like there are any. Fair. Kesha conceded. We're trying. Across the hall, a door opened. David Park stepped out alone, temples damp beneath the sheen. He approached, careful as a man crossing ice. Mrs. Thompson. Ms. Lewis. Off the record. I'm not here to defend what happened. I'm here to ensure it never happens again. Marcus is serious. Kesha regarded him. Then bury the memo culture. We're trying, Park said, but the unions have nothing to fear from dignity. Amara cut in. Protection from unfair discipline isn't a shield for abuse. Build a protocol. Both sides can live under and die by. Park nodded. We're drafting verification first language as we speak. Good, Kesha said. Write it like you'll be the next passenger. Back in the room, Carter reconvened. We're resuming. The panel will now consider a new submission. She glanced at the DOT liaison, who slid a sealed envelope across the table. We've received a data packet from an anonymous source, identifying themselves as Gate Ghost Council. You have a copy. Screens lit. Files unfolded like trapdoors. Amara skimmed, eyebrows tightening. Oh. Williams peered at his screen. That's not possible. Mitchell's attorney whispered something obscene into her sleeve. The room adjusted to a new gravity. Carter summarized for the record. Gate Ghost provides time-stamped gate camera footage from prior Skylink flights under Captain Williams. 3 separate incidents over the last 18 months. Removal of a black business traveler for tone, refusal to board a Latina mother due to overcapacity, when 12 seats remained open, and the forcible deplaning of an elderly man who demanded a wheelchair before final call. In each case, Captain Williams used the phrase, "handle it," To expedite. William's face leached to paper. Those were complicated. Complicated. Carter repeated. Do you want to amend your earlier testimony characterizing this incident as an aberration? William's mouth opened, closed, failed at a verb. Mitchell found a verb. She leaned toward her mic, voice scraping raw. I was following the culture. Her attorney gripped her wrist. Too late. The words were already permanent. Carter let a full 5 seconds pass. The culture is an argument for policy, Ms. Mitchell, not an alibi for battery. Rodriguez cleared his throat. If I may, ma'am, there's a current we all swim in. On-time metrics become gods. Difficult passengers become sacrifices. You stop asking whether your job is safety or revenue and start thinking they're the same sentence. Silence accepted the confession. Amara lifted a hand. For the record, we have one more item. She placed a small black case on the table, opened it, and withdrew a platinum verification card. Gold letters glowed under the LED light. First Family Mrs. Kesha Thompson. Beneath, a micro-etched sigil shimmered like water. Mrs. Thompson carries this as proof only for life or death emergencies. Amara said she did not present it on the plane because she shouldn't have to. Policy must protect every passenger who doesn't hold one of these. Mitchell stared at the card like it was a myth called Consequence Made Flesh. If I'd known, Kesha finally looked at her. That sentence is the problem. Mitchell closed her eyes. When she opened them, there was something like human grief. In the space where performance had been, I don't. She swallowed. I grew up working class. My mother was a daycare aide. I thought I was keeping order, the way no one kept it for us. My people like you, her voice shrank, wasn't just race, it was rage. And you aimed it at a black mother, Amara said. The system loves it when oppressed people police each other. It's cheaper. Mitchell's hands shook in her lap. She nodded. Once, a person at the first inch of a shame that had miles to travel. Carter folded her notes with mathematical neatness. Here are the panel's preliminaries. 1. We find probable cause that FAA regulations regarding passenger safety and crew conduct were violated aboard Flight 847. 2. We find a pattern of over-removal under Captain Williams that disproportionately affected marginalized passengers. 3. We recommend immediate implementation of a verification first protocol across Skylink, subject to federal oversight. 4. We initiate disciplinary proceedings against Ms. Mitchell and Captain Williams. And 5. She looked straight into the cameras because she knew they were watching. Even here, we open a broader inquiry into industry-wide on-time metrics and their role in precipitating unlawful removals. This is no longer merely a Skylink problem. The DOT liaison nodded, already drafting a press release in his mind. He would overuse the word comprehensive before lunch. Carter closed her binder. We'll recess while drafting the official order. Chairs scraped. Papers murmured. Somewhere, a phone vibrated. Buzz, 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 urgent needs disguised as polite. Amara touched Kesha's arm. We did what we came to do. Kesha nodded, but her eyes had gone elsewhere, out the frosted glass, towards something not yet in the room. Sacrifice had made an appointment and was running on time. Yenna stepped close, a timid orbit entering a gravity well. Mrs. Thompson, would you mind if I ask you something off the record? Kesha angled toward her. Ask. What if you hadn't made that call? Jenna whispered. What if you weren't? You. Kesha glanced at the card still gleaming on the table, then at Zoe, stirring in her crib, small fist, opening and closing around air like it wanted to hold something intangible. Then I'd be a segment under Airline drama and Ms. Mitchell would be back at work with a new scar, where her conscience should be. Yenna swallowed. That's what scares me. That's why you filmed, Kesha said. And why we're changing the script. David Park approached again, this time with a document printed and still warm. Draft language for verification first. He said, half proud, half terrified. Would you weigh in? Amara took it, scanned, nodded. This is a start. Kesha pointed to a paragraph. No interaction begins with threat of removal. Default is assistance, especially for families, elderly, disabled. Write that in bold. Park scribbled as if permanence were a race. Behind them, a low murmur built into something like weather. Williams had stood, hands spread, speaking low to Mitchell. She lifted her face. For a moment, her features softened with an expression that had nothing to do with unions or PR or felony statutes. It looked like regret learning to speak. Rodriguez lingered at the doorway, then turned back. Mrs. Thompson, he said, for what it's worth, you made us look in a mirror. We usually only check the glass to make sure our badges are straight. Make sure the next time you look, Kesha said gently. Someone without a badge still has a face. He dipped his head, a secular benediction, and was gone. They exited into cameras, hungry enough to eat each other. Flashbulbs stitched light across the lobby. Someone shouted, "Is this the end of Skylink?" Someone else, "Are you exploiting this for personal gain?" A third, "Do you forgive Sandra Mitchell?" Kesha paused. The building's doors sighed open behind her. The street outside smelled like asphalt and rain and newscaster cologne. She settled Zoe higher against her shoulder. The baby blinked at the world. Unimpressed, my daughter cried. Kesha said to the line of microphones, "My composure made people suspicious. I didn't perform suffering, and so they doubted it. That's how it works for black women. You're expected to break in a way that makes other people feel righteous about helping you. I didn't break. That's not a crime. A murmur. A hitch. The rearrangement of narratives mid-flight, and forgiveness," she added, voice low but carrying, "isn't a press conference. It's a practice. Ask me again once the next mother gets help before a threat. That's where we'll do the work." Amara's palm pressed lightly at her back. Time to move. They walked through the heat of questions to the cool of the car. As the driver pulled into traffic, a plane lifted from the runway beyond the overpass, rising clean into the blue. For the first time in 2 days, Kesha let her eyes close. The image fixed like an afterimage. A fuselage cutting through weather, small and stubborn and undeniable. Her phone buzzed. Marcus Board approved verification first. Launch tonight. I want you to lead the Passenger Dignity Council. Paid. Public. Yours if you want it. The word want hung like a bridge between exhaustion and purpose. Kesha looked down at Zoe, whose fingers had curled around the edge of her blouse, anchoring them both to a moment that did not ask who belonged. She typed, "Yes, but not because I'm your wife, because I'm a passenger." The reply came like a vow. "Because you're a passenger, we'll fix the airline." At a red light, the car idled. A bus pulled alongside, plastered with an advertisement for some streaming show about courtroom fireworks. In the glass, Kesha caught her reflection plain, tired, intact. She thought of all the women who had survived 1,000 people like you with nothing to verify them but their own insistence on being human. The light turned green. The car moved. Somewhere behind them, in a room full of cold glass and long memory, a panel drafted an order that would make a small part of the world less eager to punish crying. Above, contrails stitched 2 white lines across a blue, so bright it made everything else look staged. The lines crossed, nutkite touching, and unspooled toward horizon. The hearing was over. The trial was everywhere. The house had learned their rhythms. It knew the soft hiss of the baby monitor at 2:13 a.m., the kettle click at 5:45, the faint hum of Zoe's white noise machine through the nursery wall. It knew Kesha's late-night footfalls bare, careful like someone walking inside a museum that only opened for sorrow. At 1:07 a.m., the rhythm broke. A high mosquito whine hovered outside the nursery window. The monitor screen flickered a square of gray static. Then the green pulse of Zoe's tiny heartbeat. Kesha crossed the hall on instinct, lifted the shade 2 inches with 2 fingers. A drone the size of a dinner plate hovered just beyond the glass. Eye like a red ember, it drifted sideways and rose into the black. Her phone vibrated on the dresser. Unknown. You. Think you own the skis. We own the gates. People like you don't belong here. Downstairs. The doorbell chimed once. An uncanny politeness at the wrong hour. She carried Zoe's warm, milky weight against her shoulder to the foyer and peered through the fisheye. No one. On the stoop lay a small package, no label, just butcher's paper and white twine. She didn't open the door. She called Marcus instead. He answered on the first ring. You okay? A drone, she said, and a gift. I'm sending security. No, she said automatically. Zoe's sleeping. He went quiet. The silence was the length of a choice. Kesh, they've posted our address on 3 forums. We need to move you to the condo. We're not hiding. Her voice came out level. Her stomach had gone glass. That's the point. The point is, you're my family, he said, the edge in his tone an old scar reopened. Let me protect you. She rested her forehead against the wood of the door. On the welcome mat, a rectangle that said, "Come in quietly" as a joke. Before it became an instruction, someone had left a second note, taped to the package, "Coach suits you." Inside the butcher's paper, when she finally opened it, was a single neon green pacifier and a boarding pass-sized card printing of her worst moment, a still grabbed from a passenger video where the slap had not yet landed, and Mitchell's hand looked like a sermon. Kesha put the pacifier on the side table like it might be a live wire. Send the security, but not the convoy, she said. No blue lights, no neighbors. 15 minutes. She hung up and stood there in the foyer, Zoe breathing against her. The huge house suddenly too large to be useful. Someone had once told her that adulthood was bought with the currency of choosing what to be scared of on purpose. Tonight, she chose the drone. She did not choose the pacifier. In the morning, the house had learned a new rhythm. The murmur of 2 agents on the porch, the quiet sweep of a camera across hedges, the low bass voice of a man telling a small team to hold perimeter. The city woke in layers. News crawls pixelated themselves across kitchen TV screens, with numbers like weather Skylink, down 3, Bifinja sit, verification first, trending 2, union vote rumors. On the island, a stack of printouts waited. Amara had slipped them under the door at dawn. Talking points. Risk assessments, a town hall invitation to meet with organized labor at Hangar 6 at noon. In the top right of the first page, a post-it in Amara's handwriting. If we skip their house, they'll burn ours down. Go. Marcus came into the kitchen in shirt sleeves, tie draped around his neck like a thing he wasn't ready to tie to a day. He kissed Zoe's hair, then Kesha's cheek, then leaned back to study the half-moons under her eyes. Condo, he said. Hunger, she answered. You're not a mascot, he said. I'm a witness, she said. Witnesses don't win from safe rooms. That's what terrifies me, he murmured. They looked at each other for a beat. 2 strategic minds that had learned to fight entire companies but we're still figuring out how to argue about a crib. I'll meet you there, he said. Board call at 10. Cho's pressing for a pause on verification first. 48 hours to study implementation. In Doe, translation 48 hours, to kill it before it breathes, she said. A muscle in his jaw jumped. We need operational proof, something I can point to when Cho says, shareholder value. N280s, we need people, she said. Stories aren't a PR strategy. They're policy oxygen. He nodded once, the way he did when signing a contract. He still planned to fight in the margins. Hangar 6? At noon? Security sticks to you. Non negociable. The agents followed, a quiet constellation. Kesha buckled Zoe into the car seat, humming the old lullaby under her breath. Hush, little sparrow, don't you cry. Her grandmother had sung it on a porch in Carolina, where the mosquitoes sang harmony and justice took the long road home. The song had no end. It just got lower until the child slept, or the sun gave up. Hangar Anum smelled like jet fuel, coffee, and the particular brand of anger that rises off people who don't get paid to be polite. Fluorescent lights buzzed like hornets along girders. Folding chairs made rows on epoxy floor. Faces filled them: gate agents, flight attendants, cleaners in navy polos, a mechanic with grease moons under his nails, a handful of pilots, and the person who would try to turn all of them into a storm, Carl Reddick, regional union firebrand, with a preacher's cadence and an archivist's memory for every slight. A corporation had failed to log. He took the mic before the moderator could introduce him. Verification. First is a pretty phrase cooked in a boardroom, he said, voice amplified to steel. Translation. Delay first. Translation. Jobs at risk when on-time bonuses evaporate. Translation. We get spat on at the gate, while executives post hashtags. Murmurs. Nods. A smattering of applause that tried to be polite and landed mean. David Park stood near the back, trying to be invisible in a suit that had never been invisible. Amara sat at the end of a row, legal pad already full. Agent Rodriguez slipped in along the wall, a plainclothes island among uniforms, eyes bright with the kind of attention that misses nothing because it's tired of missing everything. The moderator finally got the microphone back. We're here to listen. Mrs. Thompson has asked to speak as a passenger and as a parent. Some in the crowd booed on reflex. A reflex trained by decades of management tells. And management tells by marriage. Kesha waited a full 3 seconds, enough for people to hear their own noise. She lifted Zoe against her hip and spoke without the mic. This is my child, she said. Her voice carried anyway. Anger always made a room quiet for the wrong reasons. She cried on a plane. A woman slapped me for it. Verification. First isn't a slogan to me. It's whether she grows up learning that help shows up first, not the hand. A plane rolled past the open hangar door. The roar filled the space, and then drained away like an ocean that couldn't make up its mind. Reddick stepped forward. Ma'am, with respect, no one supports slaps. But you and your husband, the syllables dragged like a plow through stone, don't have to make a flight crew's split-second decisions. We do. We get screamed at. We get filmed. We get disciplined for late departures, even when the delay is a toddler or a tantrum or a policy that told you to remove before you asked. Kesha said. He jabbed a finger toward the ceiling. We have targets. We miss 'em. You cut hours. We miss him. The board calls for heads. Verification first means we wait. And when that wait costs a slot, you show me which executive loses a bonus. Because it's not the ones on the jet bridge. Someone in the back yelled, say that. Someone else. We're not villains. A gate agent in the front row dabbed at her eyes when she thought no one was looking. Kesha nodded. You're right about incentives. You're right about targets. You're right to be angry. And you're wrong if you believe that the cost of your metrics should live in my daughter's cheek. The culture made you choose speed over dignity. That's not your fault. It's your fight. Let's change the math together. Before Reddick could retort, a young man in a reflective vest jogged in, breathless, phone high. There's a new clip, he said. It's everywhere. On his screen, a video edited to make Keisha look like the aggressor. The slap cut just out of frame. The angle made it seem like her hand moved first. The caption did the rest. CEO's wife attacks crew, lies to feds, gold privilege. Comments bloomed like mold. A low, satisfied rumble ran through the hangar. The sound of confirmation bias. Finding a chair. Knew it. Never saw the full thing. They always hide something. Jenna Chen pushed through the edge of the crowd, backpack thumping against her knees. Her voice shook, but didn't break. It's fake, she said into the air because microphones were gate-kept. Look at the artifact's frame 13. The motion vectors stutter. They've spliced 3 angles. Reddick smiled like a man who'd found a thread to pull. And you are Jenna Chen, she said, lifting her chin. The live streamer, the one who filmed it before any of you knew her name. The room turned, the way rooms do when a new scapegoat volunteers to be brave. Someone muttered, influencers. Someone else, paid plant. Jenna held her ground. Plug it into the projector, Amara said, already moving. Show the raw, side by side. Minutes later, 2 videos filled a white wall. The doctored narrative on the left, the jittery, unglamorous truth on the right. Amara froze the frame before the slap. Count, she said. 1, 2. In the right-hand clip, Sandra's arm rose like a verdict and fell like tradition. The room inhaled as one organism about to cough up denial. Reddick straightened his shoulders, not ready to back down. Okay, that one's fake. But policy still. A voice from the doorway cut him off. Policy didn't tell me to hit her, Sandra Mitchell said. She stood on the threshold. Eyes smaller than 2 days ago. Hair pulled back without the uniform's slick bravado. Her hands were empty. She had brought no attorney today. The hangar absorbed her like a gather takes a stray stitch. You could feel the crowd ready itself to hate her. She walked to the line of folding chairs and faced Keisha. No microphone, no script. I was wrong, she said. The words hit the concrete and stayed there, stubborn, not rolling toward forgiveness, and not asking to murmurs. Sharp, someone hissed. Traitor, someone else. Too late. Mitchell kept going. I told myself I was keeping order. I told myself I was protecting passengers who paid more. I told myself people like you was about behavior and not about what I saw first. Her throat worked. I've been contacted by a group Punctual Skies Coalition, offered to fund my defense if I say Skylink went woke. They told me to go on morning shows, blame Mrs. Thompson, say the slap never happened. She pulled a cheap phone from her pocket, a burner with a cracked corner. It's all on here. Names, numbers, talking points. Amara raised a hand. May I? Mitchell gave her the phone like it weighed 30 pounds. I don't want to be that person, she said to no one and everyone. I'm still going to federal court. I'm still going to lose my job. But I'm not going to be their weapon. Reddick sneered. You expect us to believe you just grew a conscience. Mitchell turned to him with an expression that looked new on her face, something like fatigue learning its own limits. I expect you to believe I'm tired of being another man's useful rage. Silence did what amplification could not. Rodriguez stepped out of the shadows of the wall and cleared his throat. For what it's worth, he said, I was in a briefing yesterday where a hedge fund analyst used the phrase, short the dignity. They think it's a fad. If they can paint Mrs. Thompson as a liar, verification first D's. Stock bumps, they cash out, nervous laughter, the kind that can't find the correct exit. Park rubbed a hand over his face, like he could wipe off capitalism. Amara scrolled the phone with surgical focus. There, she said softly, tapping a message. Trans-Hemisphere Ventures. And of course an aviation policy non-profit that shares an accountant with a competitor. She looked up, eyes flint. We can subpoena this. Reddick's certainty faltered a degree. The crowd looked from Kesha to Mitchell to the screen where the true clip glowed next to the lie, like a pathology slide. People shifted in their seats. That sound again, the rearrangement of narratives, mid-flight. Kesha took a half step toward Mitchell. I won't do the work of your forgiveness for you, she said, but if you're choosing truth today, then thank you. Mitchell nodded once. It wasn't absolution. It was geometry. 2 points mapping a line. Reddick regrouped. Instinct, finding the lane he'd been trained into. Fine. Let's stipulate truth. Let's talk reality. We're staring down a schedule collapse. If we wait to verify every complaint, we'll miss slots. We'll miss incentives. We'll miss paychecks. Then, change the incentives, Marcus said from the back. He had slipped in during the argument. Security hovering like a shadow that never forgot to check its corners. When the crowd realized who had spoken, a shiver ran through it. Resentment, hope, fear, opportunity, all wearing the same face. Cho wants to pause. Verification first, he said bluntly. He won't, but I need your help to keep it alive. We'll retie bonuses to completion with care 24-hour on-time averages instead of departure slots. We'll measure assistance rendered, not just minutes saved. You want to get paid? Help people board with dignity faster than you used to remove them. A mechanic barked a laugh. You gonna write that on a t-shirt? Boss, on a contract. Marcus said, and on a dashboard you can see. Reddick crossed his arm, not giving ground because ground was how he got paid. Words. Pilots. Marcus said, know that trimmed wrong, an aircraft will fight you the whole climb. We've been trimmed wrong for years. We're going to set the nose differently. You can help or you can let hedge funds tell your story while they short our stock and then your hours. A pause. Heads turned toward Reddick like cameras picking a reaction shot. He didn't blink. He also didn't have a ready sermon for that scent. Kesha shifted Zoe to the other hip. The baby gurgled and pawed at the mic cord nearest her. Like any cord is a destiny. We're not enemies, Kesha said into the air, weary and steady. We are all tired of being yelled at by people who think money bought them quiet. But the answer to that can't be yelling down the people with the least power. Verification. First isn't a gift to me. It's a sad belt. Put it on. So when we hit the next pocket of ugly air, we don't throw a child against a wall. A plane's APU whined to life somewhere beyond the hangar doors. The noise lifted gooseflesh on Keisha's arms, the body's old habit of respecting the machines that could suspend 100,000 pounds in sky by faith and physics. The town hall didn't end in applause. It ended in something more useful. A bruise of silence where people were thinking in public as the crowd dispersed in clusters. Some soft Mitchell stopped at the edge of the space where security waited with patient eyes. Mrs. Thompson, she said, voice low. I told myself, people like you meant rude. Entitled, today I heard the part of me that meant black. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to tell you I heard it. Kesha's answer came out before she thought to polish it. Then don't go on TV to fix your reputation. Go back to all the people you've hurt and fix theirs. Mitchell flinched, then nodded. Like someone being given reps in a gym no one wants to pay to attend. Outside, the afternoon had sharpened. Heat rose off tarmac in waves, as if the concrete were trying to turn itself into air. Kesha buckled Zoe into the car seat. Someone had spray-painted "People Like You" across the rear bumper overnight, the neon paint catching the sun. An agent moved to scrub it with a rag. Kesha touched his wrist. "Leave it," she said. "I need the reminder." Amara slid into the passenger seat. Burner phone in a Ziploc like contraband or evidence, which it was. "We can tie at least 2 of those texts to Trans-Hemisphere. We'll drop them on Carter's desk tonight." "Good," Kesha said. "Let's let sunlight do its job." Security pulled them onto the service road. The skyline rose ahead like cardboard cutouts, propped in a classroom diorama. Kesha's phone buzzed. Marcus board vote set for 48 hours. "We need a win that shows VF works." Ideas. And then again Cho. "Temporary suspension to calm markets." Marcus had forwarded. Translation Adair. She typed, "I'll find you, passengers. Routes. Proof. Pause. I'm going to fly the new protocol. Quietly. As a regular traveler, you test managers. I'll test the front line." On the other end of the city, in a glass room where money dressed like conscience, board chair Leonard Cho clicked his pen and told a dozen faces on a dozen screens that adults were handling it. Marcus muted, turned in his chair, and watched the contrails outside, cross and uncross without touching. He remembered flight school. The way instructors taught you to trust instruments when your body lied. He wondered what instrument told you the truth about men who'd never seen a jet bridge up close. Back in the car, Kesha glanced at the cracked pacifier on the console. She picked it up, turned it in her fingers. It was nothing. It was something. She opened the glove box, pulled out a paperclip shaped like a set of wings. A cheap trinket from a Skylink orientation. Years ago, when mission statements still felt like maps, and clipped the taunt note to the pacifier's ring. Then she slid the whole thing under the visor. "Souvenir?" Amara asked. "Debt," Kesha said. They drove past the chain-link fence, where a boy in a faded superhero t-shirt stood with his face pressed to the diamonds, watching jets leap like intent. He waved when he saw the car, the reflex of children to assume the world was friendlier than it was. Kesha waved back. The boy grinned, gap-toothed, and returned his attention to the sky. Every takeoff looked like proof. That night, after Zoe's bath and the bare-eared cap and the low hum of the white noise machine reset the house to its chosen rhythm, Kesha stood in the doorway of the nursery and watched her daughter sleep. Outside, a distant chime, a neighbor's wind bell, ticked the air. The drones didn't come back. The notes had been shredded and bagged for evidence. She leaned her head against the doorframe and let the day catch up. Her breath hitched, then steadied, then hitched again. She pressed her palm to her sternum and felt the old panic try to set up its tent. She did not let it. She bent at the waist and breathed into the bottom of her lungs until the room thinned back to a size she could live in. In the mirror over the dresser, she saw a woman tired beyond cosmetics, a gold engraving catching the nightlight on the back of a black watch. "To my brilliant wife, MT." The glass face had a new hairline scratch from the hangar's epoxy floor. She touched it. "Cost of doing business," she whispered. She didn't mean the watch. Her phone lit. "Agent Rodriguez." For what it's worth, Hangar Talk tonight's already different. They're arguing with the right enemies. Be careful out there. "Jenna, I sent 3 more videos to Amara. Raw. Watermarked. They can't fake everything. Mitchell unknown, I'll testify. I won't take their money. Kesha typed 3 words to each. Thank you. Forward. Thank you. Safe. Do that. Heal. In the quiet, the lullaby rose in her throat. Unbidden hush. Little sparrow. And turned itself down to a hum. She wasn't singing to Zoe. She was singing to the next mother who would board a plane with a child and 100 strangers' expectations. Downstairs, she taped "People Like You" to the refrigerator with the gold wing paperclip. She stood back and looked at it until the phrase lost some of its shape and gave up a sliver of its hold. 10 minutes, she thought, standing alone in a kitchen that had watched them learn to be brave. That's how long it takes to decide who belongs. Tomorrow, she would buy a ticket under a name that wasn't hers and see if the decision had changed. The house breathed. The city turned somewhere in the dark. A drone's battery died, and the quiet rushed in not as capitulation this time, but as readiness. Takeoff, she thought, and this time we checked the trim. The conference room's recycled air tasted like printer heat and coffee grounds. Agent Sarah Carter tapped the pacifier bag with the capped end of a Sharpie, careful not to smudge the adhesive where the note had been taped. You're certain he slipped it in at the door? Kesha nodded. Row 14. He blocked an overhead, provoked a father, filmed the reaction, then planted this on the way out. Rodriguez leaned on the sill, forearms crossed, eyes on the tide of travelers beyond the glass. He's not freelancing. I've seen agitators. They like spectacle, not logistics. This one reads memos. Amara arrived 3 strides late, hair in a practical knot, badge lanyard tucked in her blazer. She laid 3-color printouts on the table, screenshots of Pike's screen with the THV, OPS handle, timestamps, partial message previews. I magnified the notification previews. It's a private channel, probably a Slack or a copycat. Handles active across 2 other platforms under different aliases. Same grammar, same typos, British-style quotes, missing serial commas. He's either careful or dumb enough to repeat himself in a dozen places, or both. Carter said, "We'll draft warrants on the handle and the phone. Airport jurisdiction lets me go faster than usual. Rodriguez have airport PD pick him up discreetly. Not in the terminal if we can help it. I want his phone live when we seize it." "Copy," Rodriguez replied, already dialing. He cupped the phone and spoke low. "We'll do a soft stop near the garage. No cuffs unless he sings off key." Carter pinned the pacifier bag under a paperweight, shaped like an aluminum winglet. "You said you're using an alias today." She looked at Kesha without apology. "I'll keep you out of any paperwork. But Ms. Thompson, if you're willing to give a statement, make it Monroe." Kesha said, "The less my name shows up near his, the better for now." The door cracked, and Nia slipped in. Cheeks flushed from running, she looked smaller in the federal room than she had at the gate. An athlete cooling down after the race. No one cheered. "Sorry, I wasn't sure if I should." "You should," Carter said. "Kind. You were a witness." Nia's gaze fell to the pacifier in the bag. "He's the reason Malik almost cried. You protected your passenger." Kesha told her, "That's the job." Nia let out a breath that had wanted to be a sob. "After the stream went up, someone found my work Instagram. My DMs are full of," she gestured weakly. The words didn't want to move through her mouth. "Full of woke witch and go back to training and pictures." She swallowed again. "Sorry." "Don't be." Amara pushed a card across the table. "This routes to our comms firewall. Forward anything that looks like a credible threat. We'll scrub your info. Run it through the same tools we use on executive doxing." Nia blinked rapidly, angry at her own eyes. I was doing what the memo said." Verify. Offer. Don't escalate. I thought that was the point. It is, Kesha said. They're angry because it worked. Carter capped her pen. Here's the plan. Airport PD will intercept Mr. Pike online name Evan while he's walking to his vehicle. We'll keep him calm. Ask about the planted item and invite him to a conversation in a quieter place. If he declines, we'll detain him on reasonable suspicion of stalking and harassment. Meanwhile, we track that THV OPS handle and see which devices ping when we serve the warrant. If there's a warm body at the other end, we walk that ladder up. And if the ladder touches an office with a view, Amada said. Not quite a question. Carter allowed herself a tight, humorless smile. Then I hope they like the color beige. Federal rooms don't do views. Agent Carter. Rodriguez was off the phone. Soft stop in 20. His car is in garage B. Level 4. We'll ask politely. Good. Carter set the pacifier bag in a separate evidence pouch, labeled it with block letters, and slid it into a satchel. Ms. Monroe. Ms. Patterson, thank you. We'll circle back after we get his phone. They filed out into airport daylight. Down on C-23. Nia returned to her podium with the professionalism people mistake for ease. Gale lifted a paper cup in salute from the doorway of another aircraft. Kesha caught Nia's eye and gave her a small "you are seen" nod. Nia straightened half an inch. Come on, Amara said softly, steering Kesha toward the atrium. Food, sugar, something non-federal. They found a table under a fake ficus near a bar with too many flat screens. The place was called Hangar 11, all corrugated aluminum and Edison bulbs, a corporate idea of grit. Sports anchors mouthed silent analysis over a crawl about turbulence on the markets. The Chiron under a business channel talking head read Aviation Reform Investors React to Verification First. Cho's friend, Kesha said, half to herself, they'll be pushing that narrative as hard as they can. Heard. Amara's phone buzzed with a new encrypted ping. She scanned it once, twice. Heads up. Our boy Pike has a meeting here in the next 10 minutes. How do you know? Because the THV OPS handle just geofenced a message to Sea Drinks. That's a cute code for Sea Concourse Bar. He thinks he's clever. She looked up, eyes already searching. We let Carter know. She asked us to stay out of the way. Kesha traced the condensation ring her water glass left on the table. Staying out of the way isn't my strongest skill. I've noticed, Amara said dryly. It's also why you're still breathing. Evan Pike walked in like he owned an algorithm. A man who believed proximity created leverage. He chose a high top near the back, where he could see the entrance and the hallway to the restrooms, and his own reflection in the TV above the whiskey shelf. A moment later, a man in a mid-price suit set, and an expensive haircut appeared at his elbow. The suit's color was that particular blue designed to impress men who read profiles about themselves. His tee didn't quite match. He wore confidence like a mispronounced name. Mr. Pike. The suit clapped him on the back as if something had been agreed to in advance. Busy morning. Busy as money. Pike said, UTHV. The suit smiled without showing teeth. Call me Keen. Of course it was. Men like that were always named after hard syllables. Keen took the stool, ordered something brown, and spoke like a man narrating a PowerPoint. We like the cabin video. The optics are effective solo dad, crying kid, gate, favoritism. Your language landed. Woke delays, is polling well, Pike preened. Told you. People are tired of being told to care. Keen slid an envelope across the table without looking at it. Showmanship. There's more. if we can show a pattern. Gate agents ignoring policy, crews wasting fuel while verifying identities, safety scares tied to DEI. That's the frame. A maintenance delay slowed us. Pike said, they used it to make up time. I had to pivot. Keen's smile thinned. Then we pivot harder. We don't want delays. We want perception. You keep your camera rolling, and you submit content to the pipeline. We scrub faces. We seed accounts. We do third-party compensated opinions. We never touch it directly. THV wants distance, Pike said, as if he were a partner and not a pawn. Hemisphere Ventures wants truth to win, Keen said smoothly, and truth is what you can convince people to see. Amara's hand found Kesha's under the table, squeezed it once in a code they used when elevators stalled in their stomachs. Do not stand up. Pike leaned in. What about the wife? Kesha felt her back go cold, the way you feel a storm behind your neck. She didn't move. Amara didn't let go. Keen took a careful sip, off limits in public. He let the pause hang just long enough to say in public twice, but she's clearly involved. I have to assume we have eyes on her schedule. Found a pacifier, Pike said softly, and for the first time there was a note of hunger in his voice that didn't belong to politics. Keen's smile vanished. No, we don't touch children. We imply. We frighten. We don't cross the line. You hired me to make lines blurry. We hired you because you're deniable, Keen said, stay deniable. Through the bar's glass wall, two men in polo shirts, Airport PD, in their soft uniform drifted by the entrance, paused at the hostess stand like they were arguing about lunch. Rodriguez was 3 bodies behind, reading a menu he already knew by heart. Carter didn't appear. She didn't need to. Pike's phone buzzed. He turned the screen without thinking. Amara had the angle. The notification banner read THV. OPS. Next target, C agents, Naya P. Trending. Press on. Got you. Amara breathed, the barest hint of triumph under her breath. Keen stood, the envelope gone from the table with a magician's easy misdirection. Stay reachable, and stay at least 1 jurisdiction away from her. If you get cute, we'll cut you loose. You'll need me when the vote lands, Pike muttered. Keen smiled exactly the way boardrooms do when they've already moved the furniture out of your office. There will always be a man who can operate a phone. He turned to leave. Airport PD slid into the space he vacated. Sir, one said to Pike, voice friendly. Quick word. Pike's smile was the weapon of men who believed they were camera-proof. Sorry. Guys. Private meeting. That's the thing, the officer said. Private things get complicated when they're recorded. He showed his badge. No click of cuffs. No spectacle. Walk with us. Pike blustered. I'm press. Then you'll enjoy the story, the officer said, steering him toward the door. Rodriguez caught Kesha's eye as he passed. Just a fraction. Enough to say we've got it. Then kept moving. They didn't touch Pike until they hit the garage elevator. When they did, it was polite and instructional. The doors closed on his voice, rising an octave into the human register of consequences. Amara exhaled, shaky in a way she'd never allow in a room with wood paneling. I hate watching that and not finishing it. Finishing it is paperwork and silence, Kesha said. Better than hashtags that win and laws that lose. Her phone buzzed. Marcus Cho is corralling the delays narrative. Your anti-ice note helped. Ops confirmed we avoided a return to gate chain in Detroit. I need faces to put with that. Investors keep asking if VF is just optics. She snapped 2 quick photos through the glass. Nia kneeling to talk to a child at knee level, while the child's mother dug for boarding passes. Gale handing a water to an elderly man who dropped his pills, a mechanic rolling a cart back to a hangar with a grease smear on his cheek like war paint. She sent them with a message: "This is the work. This is the cost. This is the win. Tell them the plane landed with 3 minutes to spare because someone took 9 to verify." "Eat," Amara commanded gently, pushing a basket of fries toward Kesha, as if it were medicine. "Your hands are shaking." "They'll stop," Kesha said, surprised to hear it out loud. "They always do." They didn't, not for a while. Not when a CNN lower third flashed, "Breaking airport police detain man in connection with online agitation campaign." Not when Caldwell, of all people, posted a LinkedIn update, the length of a novella about productivity and resilience that somehow included a squinting apology for misunderstanding new policies. Not when Nia texted a picture from the break room, a staff whiteboard, where someone had written "Verify Protect" in marker and drawn a childish sparrow that looked more like a potato with wings. They steadied. Finally, when Keisha's phone rang and the word "daycare" streaked across the glass like a thrown stone, she swiped immediately. "This is Keisha." "Hi, Mrs. Thompson," said a nurse whose voice had always been light and now had a weight at the bottom. "You could stub your toe on." "Zoe is fine. She's napping, but I wanted to let you know." A woman came with an ID we didn't recognize. She said she'd been authorized to pick up. The name was close: Keisha, with an I, and an extra middle name that wasn't in our file. We followed procedure. We refused. She left. We filed the report. We're increasing checks. The napkin under Kesha's hand tore without her noticing. "Did she touch her? Did she see her?" "No, ma'am," the nurse said quickly. "We never brought her out. We did a lockdown. Police were called. She was gone before they arrived. We're safe. But I wanted you to know, because someone is reminding me they can spell." Kesha said. Her voice didn't shake that time. It dropped lower, got a little iron in it. "Thank you for following policy. I'll send security immediately. And I'll update our authorized list." She ended the call and stared at the torn napkin until it looked like coastline. Amara's eyes were already on her. "What?" They tried a pickup. Sloppy fake, close enough to be a warning. She swallowed, felt it all the way down. "They're moving from planes to ground." Amara didn't say, "Oh my God." She didn't throw her arms around her. She said, practical as an oxygen mask, "We escalate. We move Zoe to the corporate center with security for a week. We go public with the pacifier. We make them afraid to try again." Going public puts a target on Nia and Gale and Malik and every person who takes 9 minutes seriously, Kesha said. "You can't fight a shadow and ask everyone else to stand in daylight." Amara replied, "The only thing that beats a whisper campaign is a microphone." Kesha closed her eyes and heard her grandmother's porch boards again, cicadas loud enough to be time itself. "Hush, little sparrow, the tree is strong, but the wind is real." She opened them to a world that had not changed and people who had. "Call Marcus," she said. "We hold a press conference, not with a lawyer, with a mechanic, a gate agent, a parent. We show the 9 minutes, we show the anti-ice valve. We show the pacifier. We do it in front of the arch." Amara's mouth twitched. "St. Louis is about to get a sermon." "And call Carter," Kesha added. "Tell her we're going to say the quiet part out loud without jeopardizing her case." "We don't name Pike. We name the method." Rodriguez returned to the bar, sweat in a comma at his temple. "Posture easy. Souvenir," he said, and put a Ziploc down next to the fries. Inside sat a second pacifier. Same neon, same clip. No note this time, just a fingerprint powder dusting like gray pollen. From his glove compartment, Kids? Kesha asked. None, Rodriguez said, but he likes to pretend. Carter called 2 minutes later. Search warrant executed on THV. OPS devices through a cloud provider. We have IPs mapping to a Regus office downtown. Floor rented by a shell. Shell controlled by a portfolio. Guess who on the board? Cho, Kesha said. Because gravity exists, or his shadow. His chief of staff signs the leases, Carter said. Enough daylight for questions, not enough for handcuffs. Yet, how much time do we have before he burns the trail? Hours, Carter said. Maybe days if he's arrogant. He's arrogant, Kesha said, and heard the steel in her own thesis. We'll steal his hours. They left the bar and walked the concourse, like any three travelers trying to make a gate and not a point. Overhead, a bank of televisions shifted from sports to live news. Skylink announces verification. First results. On time, arrivals up 2%. Safety events down 18%. A reporter's voice cracked as she tried to synthesize numbers into outrage and failed. As they passed C-23 again, Caldwell stood near the podium, hands in pockets, contrition stapled to his face. He waited until Nia had a breath between passengers. Ms. P. I wanted to say earlier, I was hungry, Nia offered with professional mercy. Unkind, he said, wincing at his own sincerity. I watched the maintenance note trickle through on a blog I follow. The thing with the valve. If you'd pushed without that check, I just wanted to say thank you. For he gestured vaguely at the boarding door. The gate. The world. Doing it right. Nia's smile didn't reach her eyes. Not because she wouldn't let it, but because her day had used up the muscles for building bridges. We try, she said. Every flight. Caldwell nodded and moved aside. Smaller than before, but not smaller. In a way that felt like punishment. Just a person again. Not a narrative. Faces. Kesha texted to Marcus, attaching a photo of Nia helping an elderly woman with a walker negotiate the jet bridge angle. Not slogans. Her phone buzzed again. David Park this time. Board rumbling about overreach. If you do a presser, my view, you either tell this story or they will. Bring receipts. Bring a mechanic. I'll hold the lawyers. She typed, bring the sparrow, then deleted it and wrote, bring the anti-ice valve tech. The one with the grease war paint. She hit send and felt something like peace wearing work boots. They reached the security office that had been commandeered for Carter's team. The room was a geography of boxes and coffee cups now, a new nest for a transient flock. On a side table sat a printout. Amara must have conjured from the ether, a black and white still of the wing, with a rectangle around the offending valve, captioned, checked, cleared log. Under it, someone had written in thick marker, 9 minutes. 3 hours saved. Kesha took a photo of that. 2. She saved it to a folder, titled, Sermon. She hadn't stood behind a podium since grad school debates. She hadn't wanted to, but dusk would stack up against the arch in a few hours, and cameras loved a line. Her phone vibrated one more time, a text from a number she didn't recognize. No words, just a picture. The neon pacifier hanging from a chain-link fence, with airplanes lifting into blue behind it. The caption, different sky, same rules. She didn't show Amara. Not yet. She forwarded it to Carter with the single word received, and then to Marcus with we go now. Ready? Amara asked, reading the set of her shoulders instead of her face. No, Kesha said. Yes. They stepped out of the office together, matched pace with the crowd, and let the concourse carry them toward the exit and the press trucks and the steel curve of the arch, waiting like a parent at pickup. Somewhere beyond, in a building with glass bigger than men, votes were being counted in whispers and then out loud. A man named Cho was deciding whether to play defense or pretend offense. A man named Keene was drafting plausible denials. A man named Pike was learning how concrete sounded when it closed around a bad plan. 10 minutes, Kesha thought again. That's how long it takes to decide who belongs. That's how long it took to sing a child quiet. That's how long it took to pull a valve and put it back. That's how long it would take to look into a camera and tell a country that verification is not suspicion, that it's care. Documented. She adjusted her cap, squared her shoulders to the afternoon, and walked faster. By late afternoon, the gateway arch cut a blade of light into the river haze. Vans with telescoping masts ringed the plaza like siege engines. Tourists orbited the perimeter, phones high, curious, until curiosity turned to allegiance, then to sides. 2 clusters had formed already hand-lettered placards that read, "Verify to protect," and stenciled signs that said, "Delays are theft." A brass band from somewhere up on Market Street rehearsed a Sousa march that kept dissolving into the same 4 bars. Like a heartbeat skipping, Kesha tightened the strap of her canvas messenger bag and tasted the metal in the air that comes with storm and scrutiny. Beside her, Amara scanned the crowd with a gaze that filed faces into categories: friendly, performative, camera hunting, dangerous. Rodriguez walked a lazy perimeter in plain clothes, with a piece in his voice that said he preferred this kind of tension to paperwork. Agent Carter's crew ghosted through the festival of outrage, like stagehands in black. "Mike, check in too," Amara said into her cuff, the words automatic. "Then we go." "What if we don't?" Marcus asked from behind, voice low. He had that hollowed-out look he wore only when the calculus shifted from business to family. He'd flown commercial into STL on purpose optics. Risk, a statement that their private jet existed for boards and emergency evacuations, not speeches. Security hated it. The board hated it more. Twitter loved it for now. Kesha turned, saw the worry he'd tried to launder out of his face, and failed. "If we don't," she said, "they win twice. They scare us quiet and make us look guilty for refusing to talk." He nodded. He moved to reach for her hand, stopped because cameras were nearer than they looked, then took it anyway. "I hate brave, Liar," she said, and the corner of his mouth let go of something that wanted to be a smile. A city official in shirt sleeves and a tie as shiny as a rain slicker approached, sweating civic responsibility. "Mrs. Thompson, Ms. Monroe, whoever you need to be, we're grateful you're doing this here. But just so you know, there's a permit limit, 30 minutes. And there's a counter-rally. We've got patrol in place, but the wind's picking up." Kesha finished for him and thanked him for saying what was true, not what was reassuring. She stepped up onto the plywood riser. The city had declared a temporary public communication platform, which is to say, a rented stage, and faced an ocean of lenses. At the front of the press pen, the major networks had staked their tripod claims. A blogger with a ring light had wormed through with Kama Sutra flexibility and a laminate that said "mostly media." On the outer ring stood people who'd never be quoted but would shape the way anyone quoted. Would be heard a union rep with a jaw like a brick, a father with a stroller and a laminated boarding pass in his shirt pocket like talisman, a woman in a wheelchair with an airline lanyard coiled around her wrist like a bracelet she wasn't sure she wanted to wear. Amara tested the mic. The speakers coughed to life, and startled a knot of pigeons. Kesha glanced up. A sparrow, small as a thumb, brown as dried leaves, landed on the edge of the amp, cocked its head, and watched, like he'd paid for tickets. She breathed once, deliberately. The cicadas of a Carolina porch hummed in her blood. "Good evening," she began. The feed delay sent her voice back at her, a heartbeat late, a ghost chasing itself across the lawn. "My name is Kesha Thompson. I'm a mother. I'm married to a man who runs an airline. I am not a passenger rights activist by trade. I didn't ask for any of this attention. But we don't get to choose our moments. We only get to choose what we do inside them." A murmur of approval, soft as cloth. She held up the neon pacifier in its clear evidence sleeve, and the crowd's sound dropped from cloth to glass. The kind of silence that fractures if you push too hard. "This was found planted in a diaper bag this morning on Concourse C," she said. "If you're a parent, you know what that means. If you're not a parent, imagine a stranger deciding to put their hands where your baby breathes." Gasps, curses, a hiss like a crowd trying to slap something far away. We've been told by people with money and megaphones that verifying identity at gates is a waste of time, that it's woke theater, that it costs you minutes you shouldn't have to give up. "I'm here to tell you a true story about 9 minutes." She nodded to the side of the stage where Hector Alvarez stepped forward in his oil-blackened work shirt, as if the hanger had been lifting weights with him all day. Grease lived in a thumbprint on his cheek, as if he'd forgotten to wipe it off or chose not to. "I'm Hector," he said into the mic, voice low and steady, the register of men who solve questions with hands. 2 years with Skylink. Before that, 6, with a regional. This morning we got a note from a gate agent about a pre-pressurization noise. Probably nothing. Could be everything. We checked. Anti-ice valve actuator was sticking. Weather's 80 degrees and clear. No one thinks about ice. But ice where it doesn't belong will ruin your day. If they'd pushed, we could have seen an engine lug. Maybe a return to gate, maybe a swap, maybe sitting you on a runway for 3 hours with a crying kid and a fuel dump and a crew timing out. We fixed it. 9 minutes lost. 3 hours saved. No drama. That's the job. He stepped back. The sparrow hopped with approval. The blogger in the ring light mouthed to her comments. "Oh wow." Kesha gestured Nia forward. The gate agent's apron had given way to a blazer that fit like a borrowed courage. She kept her hands folded. A trick she taught herself to stop them from fluttering when adrenaline put birds in her blood. "I'm Nia," she said. "I work at Gate C-23. I'm the person you yell at when a plane is broken. I'm the person who will wait with your grandmother when her wheelchair isn't at the top of the ramp because the algorithm decided the ramp company could staff lunch with 3 people. Today, a man shoved past and asked why I was delaying for diversity. He said, 'People like me always wanted to help people like me first.' I took that maintenance note anyway, because that's what the book says. Verify. Offer. Don't escalate. I'm not here to be a hero. I'm here to be a witness." 9 minutes changed the day. That's all. From the second row, the father with the stroller lifted a hand. The press coordinator pretended not to see. It wasn't question time yet, but silence has a way of making the right voices audible. "My name's Malik," he said without waiting for permission. "I was on that flight. My kid cried. A man tried to make me a headline. The gate agent made me a person." The crowd's sound lifted, then a human thing. "Not for cameras." Rodriguez's chin tilted in the corner of Kesha's eye. His version of a clapping emoji. Across the plaza, a chant seeded, then took root. No more delays. A dozen voices shouted, then 2 dozen, then a few dozen, the way a bad song becomes a hit if the radio won't quit. A man with a bullhorn, cheap plastic, American flag sticker pushed forward on the left flank. Tell the truth, he yelled toward the riser. Tell them this is about politics. You're just protecting your husband's numbers. He had a cameraman with him. Small gimbal, bigger ego. Kesha could feel Keen's budget in the way the pair moved. Not clumsy, not too slick, just credible enough to confuse. She let the chant wash. Then, here's the part where someone asks if we made up a safety issue to justify a policy. She said, beating them to their own weapon. She shifted aside, and Amara tapped a tablet. The big LED rental screen behind them woke into photographs the plane's tail number, the maintenance log entry time-stamped and signed, the actuator part number, the FAA manual page with the relevant line highlighted, a screenshot of the SkyOps dispatch note, RETURNTABLE. Chain avoided. These are receipts, she said, not rhetoric. We announce when we fail, and we announce when we fix. That's how trust works. If you're recording, get the frame with the part number. Call any A and P you know. Ask them if this is theater. A rumble of begrudging respect rolled from the middle, where a cluster of airport employees from competing airlines had gathered to watch the show. Mechanics have a face they make when they see a good checklist. Hector saw 3.5 smile, small as a spark plug. A reporter from a business network raised his mic flag, Ms. Thompson. Critics say verification first is a cover to slow boarding and sell more premium seats. And the board sources close to the board say there's a vote tonight to censure the CEO if he keeps making unilateral safety announcements that hurt shareholder value. Care to comment? Marcus, at the back of the riser, went still. David Park's text from earlier vibrated on Keisha's phone even though she'd already read it. Board rumbling about overreach. You either tell this story or they will. Keisha didn't look at Marcus. She looked at Nia. A censure happens in a room, she said. A safety call happens in the world. I care about where the bodies are. They sit in 14C. They sleep in my daughter's crib. The reporter pressed. So is your husband at risk of losing his job? Ask the board, she said. Ask yourselves why they're talking about jobs. And we're talking about valves. A woman in a teal blouse lifted a question like a dagger wrapped in silk. Isn't it convenient that your reforms make you a hero after you were the victim of a very public discrimination incident? Some people might call this exploitation. Exploitation is what a man tried to do to a crying child at a gate, Kesha said, calm, cutting, cleaner than heat. Accountability is what happens after. She held up the pacifier again. A man planted this. The same account that cheered him on told others to press on at Gate C. Different airports. Same script. That's not spontaneous outrage. That's work. Paid work. A ripple moved through the media pen. Attention, sharpening to predation. Amara touched her ear. Agent Carter's voice rode the bone mic into her skull. We've got our Regus, our shell, our chief of staff signature. If you want to say a shell company connected to, you won't hurt us. Kesha nodded to no one. We are cooperating with federal authorities, she said into the crowd. They have traced some of the online coordination to a rented office, linked to a shell corporation serviced by a political consultancy. I'm not saying a name here because we're not in the business of giving cowards press, but if you've been paid to agitate on camera today and you have a conscience, now would be a good time to quit. The man with the bullhorn smiled into his lens and doubled down. What about the real delays? He shouted. My business loses money when you people play games. Your business? loses money when a crew times out on a hot tarmac. Hector called back, not bothering with the mic. You want to talk cost? Ask dispatch what a swap does to your bank. The man tried to shout over him. The chant tried to restart. Without looking, Rodriguez pivoted and planted himself between the bullhorn and the stage in exactly the way a wall is built when you don't know you need one. Amara stepped into the mic with a smile that didn't show teeth. We'll take 3 more questions, she said. 1 from general press, 1 from industry, 1 from a passenger. A hand in a pilot's shirt went up, sleeve stripes indicating seniority. Not anger. Do you want other airlines to adopt VF? Or is this proprietary? We want them to copy it better. Kesha said, if they outdo us, we'll steal it back and make it safer. That's what industries do when they care more about passengers than logos. A woman in the 3rd row lifted a small hand. She wore a headscarf and held a toddler who had given up on patience and moved on to fascination with a lanyard. My son is autistic, she said. Security screenings terrify him. Will your people know how to verify us without making him part of a show? Nia stepped forward before policy could. That's part of this, she said, voice gentle the way her job rarely let it be. We're building quiet rooms near 5 gates as a test. Low light, trained staff. We'll roll it out if it works. But even before that, you can flag your reservation, and I'll walk you through myself if you're at sea. The woman nodded, eyes wet in the way relief makes them when a stranger offers something practical instead of thoughts. Last question, Amara said. A familiar face. Caldwell raised a hand. Several people groaned. He ignored them. Newfound dignity, fragile but present. I was wrong earlier, he said, without flourish. To 1,000 strangers. I treated a gate agent like an obstacle. Then I read the maintenance note. I'm an operations consultant, not a mechanic. But I recognize a system that works when I see one. If you need a business case for VF, I'll write it and sign it. That's all. You could feel the crowd recalibrating their story about him in real time. The way a GPS reroutes after a wrong turn and sighs. Recalculating. A tremor passed through the speakers like a shrug. The lights on the stage browned, then surged. Somewhere in the trees a small drone buzzed high. Nosy. Hungry. A security officer lifted a disruptor gun, and the drone fell as if it had remembered gravity. It hit the grass with a rustle and a sad little beep. The blogger with the ring light whispered, "Whoa." Agent Carter climbed the side stairs. Not hurried, not dramatic, just present. She spoke into the cluster of mics, with the authority of someone whose badge gave her more jurisdiction than any corporate title. We've made an arrest connected to the pacifier incident, she said. Cameras snapped to attention as if film could salute. We are investigating a broader coordination effort. We will not tolerate attempts to intimidate families to sway policy. If you have received money to instigate, or if you have been threatened for refusing, my office would like a word. Ms. Thompson and Skylink are cooperating fully. In the 2nd row, a man in the bullhorn cluster slipped sideways, trying to backlash into anonymity. Rodriguez's hand found his elbow with the casual inevitability of a turnstile. If you try to go back, it will spin you forward anyway. Amara tapped the face of her watch. 30 minutes. Permit limits and human attention span intersecting at the same point. Kesha returned to the mic. 2 final things, she said. First, this policy, these 9 minutes, do not belong to me or to my husband. They belong to the people who push a stroller and a service cart and a torque wrench. They belong to the mechanic with grease on his face and the gate agent with hate in her DMs who still does the right thing at 8 a.m. Because the right thing is a habit. She paused. The sparrow hopped closer, bold now, as if he'd been told there would be crumbs of truth. Second, Someone tried to pick up my daughter today. With a name close enough to be clever, we declined, because we verify and because the women who work in her daycare have spines of steel. So here's what I'm going to sacrifice in return. She swallowed and felt the porch boards creak in her chest. I am ending the Monroe alias. No more private backhauls. No more pretending I'm someone else to protect myself while asking others to stand in the light. You want to threaten me, you'll do it with my name in your mouth. And if you threaten a child, mine or anyone's, you will find every parent in this city between you and the door. A low thunder rolled through the plaza approval that wasn't applause yet, because applause felt too light for what she'd just put on the table. Marcus closed his eyes for a beat and opened them with a new expression in them that wasn't relief, wasn't horror, was something like respect, forced to grow in harsh weather. A chant started that no one had planned. Not no more delays. Not a slogan that could be bought in bulk. It was one word, two syllables. Old as law, protect. 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 The sparrow, startled, took off, made a quick circle that flashed the light through his wings, then landed on the arch rail higher ground, better view. The drone slept in the grass. The bullhorn man had become background. The cameras had eaten their fill and were still hungry. Amara closed the binder she'd brought because it was important to close something in a world that didn't. Hector clapped Nia on the shoulder, leaving a clean handprint on her blazer that looked like an autograph. Caldwell stepped back into the anonymous geography of good intentions, which is where apologies belong once they've been made. Kesha stepped away from the mic. Marcus reached for her again, this time not caring who filmed it, and pulled her into a hug that held too much, and exactly enough, over his shoulder. David Park was already on two phones, triangulating board members like a sailor watching a storm line. His face told her what his voice would say later: there will be a price. Agent Carter intercepted them at the steps. The office connection is solid, she said quietly. We'll get subpoenas for emails from the Shell's registered agent. It buys us time. They can't shred what we already have, but they'll try to shred everything we don't. Also, we recovered an identical pacifier from Pike's vehicle. Prince pending. He's talking badly. Keen. Amara asked. Gone. Carter said, men like that don't run. They dissolve. But someone always holds the lease. We'll tug. They started down the riser stairs. A woman stepped into their path with the graceful audacity of someone used to backstage corridors mid-40 seconds, camera ready without reading as television, carrying a leather folio and the scent of money that thinks it's virtue. Ms. Thompson, she said warmly, I'm Evelyn Cho. My husband serves on your board. I wanted to personally. Your husband, Kesha repeated, letting the words weigh themselves. She didn't stop walking. Evelyn kept pace. The well-trained do. He's concerned about consistency. Evelyn continued. Smile constant. Shareholders. Worry. When messaging shifts from alliances to activism, our message is safety. Kesha said, if that's activism, your dictionary needs an update. Evelyn didn't blink. There's a special meeting tonight, she said, pleasant as a lullaby. Procedural. Of course, it would be helpful if your husband emphasized stability. Tell your husband to emphasize spine, Kesha said, then caught herself and softened the edge because not all spouses are indictments. Tell your husband he can call me if he wants to know what 9 minutes felt like. Evelyn's smile didn't crack. It cooled. Good luck with your press, she said, and vanished into a car the color of quiet. They reached the service path that would take them behind the trucks, away from the chant and toward the next thing. The sky over the river had turned the color of bruised steel. Somewhere drums had started, and a child was laughing at a bubble that refused to pop, no matter how determined her fingers were. Board at 7, Park called over the wind, cupping the phone. They're shorting the stock on rumor. We need numbers. I want the Detroit valve story out with timestamps. We'll eat a little FAA crow for that deferred AD from 2 years ago before someone else serves it. It looks like honesty because it is sacrifice now, Marcus said. Saves a scalp later. Park shook his head once. Not necessarily. Keisha stopped. She hadn't planned to. Her feet did it for her. She turned back to the arch, to the plaza, where people were still folding their signs like laundry they intended to wear later, to the stage where a sparrow sat still there, guarding an empty mic, like a tiny, brown usher. She took her phone out and snapped one more picture. The arch, the bird, the abandoned plastic shell of a drone in the grass. She captioned it, "Silence is not safety. Verification is care." Documented. She hit post before she could overthink it, and felt the ripple move out like a thrown stone making circles she'd never see hit shore. "Ready?" Amara asked, which was a lie for both of them. "No," Kesha said again. "Yes." They walked into the back corridor the city had cleared, past coils of cable and cases marked "fragile," and a table with half a dozen bottles of water no one would claim. Every story has a backstage. The trick is deciding which doors you leave open when you go. Behind them, the chant dimmed to talk. Ahead of them, the phone in Park's hand, lit with a new notification, special meeting motion to suspend CEO authority pending review. He didn't show them. He didn't need to. The wind had picked up. The board preferred storms indoors. But weather doesn't care what rooms men build. Kesha tightened the strap on her bag again, feeling for the pacifier evidence pouch, feeling for the weight of choices. Her grandmother's voice crossed the distance of years, soft as a sparrow landing on a porch rail. "Hush, little bird, sing anyway." The ops room lights sat low and tired, the way offices do when they've stayed awake too long on stale coffee and worry. Flight paths pulsed across a wall of glass, and LED's green lines slipping between thunderheads, drawn in red and amber. Phones hummed on hard surfaces. The HVAC's white noise tried to pretend it was rain. Kesha stood in the doorway, with her messenger bag hitting her hip, and her grandmother's porch song humming somewhere behind her teeth. Amara was already inside, headset crooked so she could listen to two worlds at once. David Park had parked two phones on speaker in front of him and was working a third with his thumbs, his tie loose, his eyes quick. Marcus paced beneath the world map, hands behind his back like a captain on a bridge, pretending he could will storms to drift a quarter-inch left. St. Louis line just lit up again. A dispatcher announced, "Dry as a weather report. Cells from Columbia to Belleville, tops spiking. We can shoehorn departures for 20 minutes. After that, it's hold and hope." On the far left of the board, a flight label flashed from white to yellow to the color of a bruise. 1720 STL TCA. Dep 100 and Teen Pax 172. A small icon blinked beside it, a red heart. Organ transport. Time window. Where is 1720 right now? Kesha asked, pulling in close enough to smell the paper and the plastic and the metal of other people's decisions. Park slid a screen toward her. Gate C, 29. They'll hit the runway slot if they push in 8. The number slid a blade between her shoulder blades. VF, live, Amara said, and pointed to another tile, where a simple progress meter ticked up, verification first docs. Logbook Creef. Rest maint Delta Cargo Hain. The bar jumped, then paused at cargo chain. "What's the chain?" Marcus asked, stopping his pacing without meaning to. Park blew out air through his nose. The organ courier. His state ID matches the booking record, but the cooler's seal number doesn't match the pre-filed custody document, 1 digit off. A typo. Amara guessed, hopeful on reflex and trained not to be. Maybe. Park said, maybe not. A comms beep popped in Kesha's bag. Nia. NIA crowd's already hot. 1 agitator. 2 ring lights. Cooler seal discrepancy. Courier says hospital swapped coolers post-sterilization. Needs a supervisor override. Says lives are on the line. In Bali, Kesha. They are. Hold him. Call the hospital. Put the receipt under a camera. She looked up at the board again. The heart icon pulsed like it had found its own rhythm and didn't like ours. Put me on with the gate, Kesha said. Amara routed the call. The speaker picked up the sound of a concourse rolling wheels. Beeps. Voices floating on impatience. Nia's voice cut through, steady as a carpenter's pencil line. C. 29. Nia, it's Kesha. I have your courier, a cooler that's almost right. A woman on TikTok telling her followers, I'm killing a baby, and 6 minutes. I've got you, Kesha said. Get us the hospital on another line. Park had already texted the transplant coordinator, somewhere in another city. A human being whose job was to shepherd organs through bureaucracy, while their clocks ran, answered on a ring and a half. This is Claire at Cardiotrans. This is Kesha at Skylink, Kesha said. We're verifying seal number on a heart bound to DCA. Your courier's seal is 1 digit off his chain of custody document. Read me the cooler number, Nia recited. Claire swore softly. We swapped coolers after sterilization. We logged it. Somebody fat-fingered the digit in the upload. The correct seal is the one at your gate. Then revise the document and email it to me. CC Nia and the hospital, Kesha said. Nia, record yourself reading the new number next to the cooler on camera. Put both on the file. VF satisfied. A murmur rose on the concourse feed, crescendos of complaint carrying like gulls. The ring light voice cut across, bright with accusation. They're delaying a transplant because a gate agent wants to feel powerful. Nia's voice stayed level. They're verifying because they want the right heart in the right chest. Approved. Inbound dock. The VF meter clicked to a new lane, Maint Delta, and Park. What now? Marcus asked. It was aimed at the room, but he was really asking Kesha. She read the screen. 2 hydraulic line. Long-term wear trend outside normal. Logged for monitoring. Pilot flagged it on post-push test. Amara looked up, surprised. They haven't pushed. They did a control sweep. Park said, this captain does it twice. Elena Ruiz. Company check airman. She lives to annoy metrics. On another feed, the cockpit camera angle showed the outlines of 2 heads under headsets and the glow of instruments. The radio came to life in the ops room. Elena's voice clipped and unflappable. Ops. Ruiz on 1720. I've got sluggish response on the 2 aileron. Full throw is clean, but there's friction. I want Hector. Hector Alvarez's name snapped heads like a towel pop. I'm on C, he said into his set. Already moving. Tell her to breathe the controls again. I want to hear it. In the ops room, a microphone near the yoke picked up the sound of a human hand making a machine move. The sweep was smooth until it wasn't, a faint roughness like sand where there should be oil. Hector whistled low. I don't like that song. Hold your slot. I want 4 minutes at the bay. You have 5, Elena answered, doing math with her patience and the weather and a heart in a cooler. Then I'm timing out the slot. We'll need a new one. A different voice slid onto the ops channel, smooth as varnish. Ops. This is Bryce. Kesha froze, without moving. Leonard Bryce almost never used his voice when he could use an email with a blind copy list. The board's favorite quietly aggressive feather, we are at risk of losing 38 million in throughput today if we cede slots. Bryce said to the room, not to any particular person. We need departures. We can't let activists put their policy on top of performance. Leonard, Marcus said, the word neutral as a file. Never Leo, never Lenny, just the syllables of a memo coming out of a mouth. We're in maintenance. We're not in press. Everything is press. Bryce said, we have partners on this call. They are listening. Then the partners can hear this, Elena said into the radio. Professional, polite, and utterly uninterested in shareholder euphemisms. My name is Captain Elena Ruiz. I have 172 soul, a thunderstorm line, and a hydraulic hiccup that smells wrong. Either I verify and go, or we push and make a mess of the sky. You choose. I'll sign the book either way. Silence. You could hear Bryce considering whether his voice could afford to be recorded contradicting a pilot who had said souls out loud. Hector broke it before Bryce could decide. Get me inside that bay, he said. 2 minutes. 20 seconds, if I hustle. The VF meter flashed, paused, maint check. The heart icon flashed faster. Put me on cabin, Kesha said. The cabin feed crackled alive, packs hissing. A baby's brief complaint. The murmur of 100 attention spans fraying. The lead flight attendant's voice came through first calm, a little frayed herself, trained to make news sound like hospitality. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Leah. Our captain is working with maintenance to ensure we have a safe flight today. We'll update you in 9 minutes, Kesha said softly. It wasn't for the cabin, it was for herself. In 9 minutes, Leah finished, as if they'd rehearsed the number and had agreed with it once in a safer room. We know some of you have connections. We'll work those on the ground. A man's voice cut in from row 5, amplified by entitlement. I have a surgery to perform tomorrow morning. I will not miss it because a gate agent wants to upload a video. In ops, Amara Mutered. I want a jar where we put $1 every time someone says gate agent, like it rhymes with idiot. Leah's tone sharpened to a velvet with a seam. Thank you for telling me. We'll keep you moving. Right now, your safety matters more than your schedule. The row 5 man scoffed. Safety theater. We all know this is the CEO's wife's crusade. Leah didn't take the bait. Sir, have a seat. We're almost there. On the concourse camera, Hector slid under the wing like a mechanic diving a wreck. Borescope in hand, wind pelting him with mist, like the air wanted to be rain, but hadn't committed. He touched the line, his gloved fingers delicate as a watchmaker's. The scope's tiny eye looked where people can't. Talk to me, he said into his mic, neither religious nor mechanical. Talk to me nice. The scope fed the ops wall, with a picture blown up, until the flaw couldn't hide a hairline, not a dramatic gash, not a cartoon of sabotage. A thin, pale thread tracing the fitting like a thought someone had once had, and then tried to forget. Hector sucked his teeth. Somebody leaned on this to stop a weep. It held, now it's sulking. Math, Elena said. She meant risk. Can we mail it? Park already had the master minimum equipment list up. He read the line, the diversions, the conditions under which the law lets you fly with something not quite at church. You can MEL with speed and altitude restrictions and weather that isn't this weather. Park said, not tonight. The book says no. Bryce threw his voice at the decision like money at a problem. We have a transplant on that aircraft. You want to be the headline that says, policy delays heart. Onder. Hector spoke before Marcus could. You want to be the headline that says, hydraulics fail over Terre Haute. Ibua. Replace it, Elena said. We'll buy a new slot. You have 4 minutes. the ground controller said on a different channel. He meant runway time. After that, there's a 29-minute gap. Leah's voice in the cabin. Thank you for your patience. It would be true even if it wasn't. Hector keyed his throat mic to the ramp bay. Andre, I need that spare line. Now, not airport now. Door is locked. Andre panted. Already running. Dispatch has the key and a sense of humor. Break it, Hector said. Policy says, I'm in charge when a thing wants to become an accident. Hector said, break it clean and apologize loud later. You could hear the grin in Andre's breath, the perfume of breaking a small rule to keep a big one. Bryce's voice wormed back in. Do not cannibalize inventory without procurement, he said, as if invoices were bulwarks against thunderstorm. Our governance manual is not a life vest, Keisha finished. Not to him. Then, to Park. What's the procurement delay if we go through the front door? Hours, Park said. He didn't sugar it. You'll miss the transplant window. Kesha knew what sacrifice felt like in the bones now. The give of something you'd rather keep. She pulled a legal pad close, scribbled words, tore the page, signed it. What's that? Amada asked. Personal authorization to cannibalize stock pending board ratification, Kesha said. I'm indemnifying Andre and Hector against procurement policy violation for this one part. On my responsibility, Kesh, Park murmured, seeing not the paper but the downstream. They'll use that to hang you. Then they can hang me on a hook marked, saved a plane, she said. Hector. I heard her. Hector said, Andre, on my way, Andre said. And the mic transmitted his feet for 10 seconds, like a drum fill. The ramp door thunked, something gave. A lock somewhere would submit its own report tomorrow. Tonight it did the right thing and lost a screw. Andre arrived under the wing with the line and the kit. He skidded once, caught himself with a hand on aluminum, cursed like a prayer. Hector took the kit without looking up. You okay? I sprained pride. Andre said, let me hold. Under the plane, they moved, like 4 hands attached to one brain. The wind picked up and brought the kind of rain that stings. The scope camera didn't blink. The crack was an old rumor. The new line was a promise. Hector torqued to spec, lips moving silently as he counted. He'd taught himself to recite specs like scripture. He had no patience for people who winged torque like it was poetry. Pressurize, he said. The bay hissed again. Stayed quiet. Try your sweep, Captain, Hector said into the cabin mic, and the room fell holding its breath. The sound that came through next was the clean glide of engineered intention. No sand, no story, just silence where friction had been. Elena laughed, quick and private. The kind of sound you only hear from professionals when the worst possible version of the day has been shooed off by skill. That's my girl, she said. Release me. Cleared. Towers said, voice, all business, and a little relieved. If you can push in 60 seconds, I can hold the slot. Leah's voice in the cabin, immediate and sure. Flight attendants. Prepare for departure. Row 5 muttered something about crusades and metrics. Someone else shushed him. The organ courier cried once, one sound, and then swallowed it like professionals do when feelings aren't useful yet. On the ops wall, SK1720 flipped from yellow to green to rolling. The heart icon slowed its pulse. As if its preferred music had returned, Bryce wasn't done. Marcus, he said, quiet enough to sound reasonable and cold enough to frost glass. There's a special meeting of the board in 50 minutes. The motion is to suspend your day-to-day authority pending review. Kesha felt the sentence in her ribs and refused to let her spine bend. You can suspend an executive, she said. You can't suspend a policy that protects people. She wasn't speaking to Bryce. She was reminding herself, what she was buying with the paper she'd signed. Elena taxied. The rain made tiny rivers through the lights and turned the runway into a mirror. In the cabin, Leah began her safety demo. The way you sing hymns on bad nights, because saying it out loud is part of the magic that keeps machines aloft. Skylink, 1,720. Wind, 230 at 12. Cleared for takeoff, Tower said. Cleared, Elena replied. Then to Jamal, her first officer, set thrust. The engines came up through the room like a rumor that had decided to be a fact. In the ops room, even people who didn't love airplanes turned their heads, because the sound hits something ancient. Rotate, Jamal said. The nose rose. The mains lifted. The rain tried to pull them back and failed. They lifted into a sky that didn't want them and took it anyway. Lightning jittered along the horizon like paparazzi. Elena dipped a wing, took an angle she'd studied 1,000 times, and flown 200, threaded between what the radar called weather and what a pilot calls a headache, and climbed. In ops, the heart icon changed to a simple, small airplane glyph with the caption, Airborne. The VF meter winked to complete. The board that tracked delays added a green slash through a red column. On the concourse, Nia leaned her forehead against the jetway wall for just 1 second. 1 penny of rest, and then pushed back into traffic. A father in a wrinkled suit lifted his stroller with one hand and gave her a nod that meant, "You did work." The ring light woman live-streamed a pivot that sounded like a victory speech, even as comments pivoted under her feet. In the cabin at 31,000 feet, Leah stood in the galley and refilled a crying baby's bottle with water from a jug she'd brought on board for this purpose alone, because some policies are human and don't fit in manuals. Row 5 pressed the call button and then turned it off himself. In ops, Agent Carter stared at a set of IP traces crawling like ants from a shell company to a consultant to a text thread that loved the word chaos. "We've got him," she told Amara quietly, not his face yet, but his desk. "Keen?" Amara asked. "If it's not, it's his left hand," Carter said. "We'll tug the rest in the morning. Tonight, let them fly." On the wall, SK1720 inched across the map toward D.C., a green pixel drawing a line through bad weather and better choices. Park's phone buzzed with a message from the transplant team. ETA aligns with perfusion window. "Thank you." He held the screen so Kesha could see, not saying the thing out loud that would let the moment leak out of the balloon and make it drift into platitude. She nodded once. Somewhere deeper than her chest, a porch board sighed and held. Her own phone lit. A message from Evelyn Cho, special meeting, moved to 1900. "You should encourage Marcus to consider stepping aside gracefully for the quarter. Stability is the story." Kesha looked at the words long enough to taste the metal of them and then pressed the side button until they went to black. The room hummed around her with work. Thunder rolled over St. Louis like a reminder. The sparrow that had watched her earlier at the arch would be tucked under the bridge somewhere dry by now. Feathers fluffed, heart still fast. The drone lay in the grass like a toy that had learned about gravity. At 2011, an ACARS text blinked in from 1720. The ops room read it the way old sailors read stars. 1,720 smooth ride. Cabin com. Appreciate the quick hands. Tell Hector I owe him a coffee. Hector smirked at the screen in a way that meant he'd take the coffee and refuse the thanks. Tell her she owes herself one, he said, then addressed no one particular. and tell procurement I stole their part for God. Amara laughed, the kind that lets a day unclench a notch. Park didn't laugh. He was reading an agenda that could end a job in 6 lines. Another ACARS ping. This one short, like a text you write in a hall when you ought to be listening to a speech. 1720 courier asks that we relay a message. Heart is good. Window intact. Kesha exhaled for what felt like the first time in an hour. Outside the ops window, the rain finally decided to be itself, and came down in fat, deliberate drops that picked their own path across glass. Marcus stopped pacing and sat, his body recognizing defeat and duty as different roads that might converge at a cul-de-sac called Tonight. He didn't look at Kesha. He looked at the wall where his airline moved between cities, as if movement itself were prayer. In D.C., an ambulance would be idling on the tarmac, 2 nurses waiting with a cooler bigger than most people think. Hearts require. A surgeon would be washing his hands and washing them again because ritual makes steady what fear would shake. Somewhere, a person's family would be doing math with seconds and faith. Bored in 20, Park said, voice soft. Not to break something, then firmer. We'll take the Detroit valve story first. We'll bleed on the call before they cut. Let them, Marcus said. It makes good television when people who care get hurt. Kesha put her hand on his shoulder. He didn't need the pressure. He needed the message that the people you loved were weight you didn't resent. Whatever they do, she said, and didn't finish it. Because finishing turns a vow into a threat. And this wasn't about threats. This was about rooms and storms and the tiny measured dignity of replacing a part and telling a passenger the truth about why they should not be airborne yet. At 2102, another message bled into the ops board from the transplant team. It wasn't ACARS. It was a photo from a hospital corridor, blue gloves, a thumbs up in the corner, the white curve of a cooler with a green seal, the half-visible word beating in the surgeon's caption, silence in the ops room again, the good kind, the kind you earn. David Park looked like a man who'd been told his case would go to jury after all. Amara wiped the corner of her eye like dust had found its way indoors. Kesha let herself close her eyes. For a single heartbeat, she was in a different room. The daycare doorway, where an alias had kept her baby safe. The arch where a sparrow had listened. The cabin, where a slap had started a war. She had not wanted, but would not refuse. She opened them again to the light of terminals and turrets, and a workbench where someone had left a torque wrench. Just so. The board meeting alert chimed on one of Park's phones. Special session. Motion to suspend executive authority. 7:00 p.m. He reached to turn it over. His hand stalled half an inch from the device. He looked up. We go, he asked. We go, Marcus said. Kesha nodded. We go, she echoed. And the words were not about the call at all. They were about the same thing the whole day had been about. Verification before motion. The right heart in the right chest. A plane that goes when it should and waits when it must. A mother who signs a paper so a mechanic can steal a part for God. Outside, the rain slackened over Illinois. Elena leveled at flight level 360, and the weather finally admitted it would not get the drama it had ordered. In D.C., the ambulance door opened and a surgical team stepped into a room bright as a truth you don't dare look at straight on. The ops room returned to its work. Phones hummed again, not frantic, just persistent. The wall flew its green lines like kite strings in wind, somewhere beneath it all. In the rumor of conditioned air and fans, there was a familiar sound if you listened for it. Not engines, not thunder, the soft, regular, stubborn hush-hush of a sparrow's breathing. The boardroom on the 50th floor was built to look like certainty smoked glass, a table long enough to land a model airplane, a view of runways, carving light through the dark like arteries. Tonight, lightning stitched the horizon in thin white seam. Somewhere below, a trundling tug beeped, small and stubborn against weather and money. A clock on the wall read 6:56 p.m. "You're sure you want this recorded?" Evelyn Cho asked. Her tone carried the precise neutrality CFOs cultivate when every answer can move a market. Kesha stood by the window with her messenger bag strap pressed into her shoulder and a paper cup cooling between her palms. "Governance portal. Full archive," she said. "If we're going to argue about transparency, let's be transparent." Evelyn's eyes flicked toward the door. "They have the votes. They think they do," David Park said, sliding a legal pad onto the table like a dealer laying down the first honest card at a rigged table. His tie was still loose from the day that hadn't ended. "But votes don't like daylight." The door opened on a soft hiss. Leonard Bryce entered first, silver hair, blue suit, the kind of smile that shows all the teeth without any warmth. Two directors arrived behind him on tablets, little faces in rectangles rimmed with bookcases and tasteful art. Another pair dialed in audio only. Their names floated on the screen like silhouettes of influence. A corporate secretary took a place near the end, with her laptop poised, fingers ready to convert damage into minutes. Marcus came last. Clean shave, clean shirt, the tired eyes of a man who looked at airplanes the way some people look at churches. He nodded to Kesha without touching her. He knew what people online would make of affection in a room like this. Bryce took the head of the table without asking. "Special session of the Skylink Airways Board," it declared, voice cultured and close to theatrical, "called under emergency powers to address recent breakdowns in leadership judgment. The motion on the floor, there's no floor until we approve the agenda," Park said gently, already out of his chair, already smiling the polite smile that makes bullies show their hand. "And the first item on that agenda is a risk disclosure. Material, imminent, and not yet shared with this board. You'll want to hear it before you vote on anything." "Counsel," Bryce said, "you're here to answer questions, not to set the table. Tonight I'm here to stop you from eating glass," Park replied, still gentle. He looked to the screen where tiny faces peered. "Madam Secretary, please note General Counsel's request for risk disclosure. It will take 7 minutes." 5. Bryce cut in, but he leaned back. He knew what it would look like to deny risk in a room with cameras. Evelyn gave the smallest nod. 5 it is, Park signaled to security. The door opened, and Special Agent Sarah Carter entered in an unremarkable suit, with an unremarkable face trained to stay that way. She had a brown accordion folder tucked under one arm and a tablet under the other. Bryce frowned. "On what authority?" "Federal," Carter said mildly, holding up a notepad with a walnut seal. "Please continue pretending this is voluntary. It reads better." A ripple of suppressed amusement ghosted around the table. Park gestured to the screen. Carter tapped the tablet. Evidence populated the monitors with the cool indifference of spreadsheets. "Kina, Row Analytics," she began, "vendor of record for sentiment stabilization and data resilience. Payments totaling $8.2 million over 14 months from the Skylink Strategic Innovation Fund, authorized by." She clicked. A signature flashed. 1L. Bryce, acting as chair of the Strategic Fund Subcommittee. The vendor created a sub-vendor, Midwest Continuity LLC. This shell paid a content creator named Carla Chen to accelerate real-time narrative at 2 domestic gates. twice internationally. We have the receipts. A director in a very tasteful room leaned toward his camera. What exactly are we looking at? Agent. A social media arsonist on payroll, Carter said. Then this. The shell also paid a contractor who supervised maintenance at a partner facility in southwest Detroit, Gregorio Soto. Instructions read, apply temporary constraint to 2 hydraulic line. Keep flight safe but frictional. Make it sticky, not deadly. She tapped again. A signal message thread bloomed, names blacked out, and then revealed one by one like a bad magic trick. Jesus, Evelyn said under her breath. Who wrote that phrase? Bryce asked. He sounded bored. He sounded like a man who had navigated enough scandals to know how long to hold still. Your phrase, Carter said evenly. Here you are forwarding it to your risk consultancy from an encrypted personal account 4 weeks ago. Subject line, teach a lesson. Bryce didn't flinch. His face had been practicing for too long. That looks fabricated. We thought you'd say that, Park said, and slid a paper across the table. A printed email with metadata rolling like tiny soldiers down the page. Subpoena to signal. Response under seal. Chain of custody preserved. 2 carriers, 1 VPN, and a laptop we imaged this afternoon. Keene flipped a 32 p.m. when he saw the first warrant. Leonard, one of the remote faces asked, voice, now an actual human voice with air in it. You engaged a firm to deliberately escalate incidents. I engaged a firm to show us where our vulnerabilities were, Bryce said, carefully measured. Our leaderships, our policies, our optics. He put the last word in his mouth like a bad taste he would pretend to enjoy if it impressed the right donors. No one authorized harm. We're not talking about harm, you wrote, not deadly. In a text, instructing somebody to touch a hydraulic line, Kesha said, her voice low and controlled. Her hands on the back of the chair in front of her were bone still. And you sent money to a shell that paid a woman to scream at people on camera. Bryce finally turned to look at her, and his smile changed. You made the company about you, he said softly, a snake whispering to a mouse. You brought your crusade into a business that moves metal and fuel. You turned safety into theater, and the market punished us. I made it show you exactly how dangerous your play acting is. And a heart flew anyway, Park said. Spare us the hallmark. Bryce shot back. This isn't a verse. It's an airline. Evelyn's pen clicked, tiny and fierce in the quiet. Leonard, did you direct Keene to target flights associated with Verify First? Bryce waved a hand. Correlation isn't causation. Carter looked at him the way professionals do before they cut. Mr. Bryce, your problem isn't causation. It's conspiracy and wire fraud and securities fraud. She tapped again. A series of trades popped up, puts and short positions in a neat descending ladder, time-stamped 40 minutes before the first accelerated narrative went live. You bet against us, Marco said. He said it without heat, but the words put frost on glass. You made money on your own company's bad day. That's absurd, Bryce said. I placed hedges to protect the fund. Under your brother-in-law's name? Park asked, reading a second sheet. On servers we traced to your home network. A director cleared his throat. The way old men do when they've just watched someone say something you can never take back. Leonard, this is indefensible. We don't know the full story. Bryce protested. We need an internal review. Shut down this sideshow. Go back to policy. Vote the suspension and put a grown-up in charge until the market calms. Which grown-up? Kesha asked. You. Anyone who understands that feelings don't fly plane. Bryce snapped, temper finally cutting through the lacquer. You turned a customer tantrum into constitutional law. You had jet mechanics breaking locks because a mother wanted a moment on TikTok. You replaced a cracked line before it became a headline with casualties. Marcus said, "Low. And we did it while your consultant was busy tripping cameras. You want to talk about grown-ups? They were under the wing tonight." "Enough," the director in the tasteful room said. He looked older suddenly, his tie a little too tight. "Mr. Bryce, please step out. The board will confer." Bryce laughed. "You can't fire a rainstorm. You can't replace a donor. This company runs on people like me. People like you," Evelyn said quietly, and the phrase landed in the room with all the ghosts it carries. She set her pen down. "Like you. Set down something you've been carrying too long. Leonard, step out." He aimed his smile at the camera instead, making love to the lens the way men do when they think they invented it. "When this implodes, remember who warned you." "Security," the secretary said softly into her headset, and two men in navy appeared as if the walls had politely offered them. Bryce considered making a scene, calculated the optics, smiled, the smaller smile reserved for judges and vicars, and left. The door whispered shut. Silence. Lightning stitched the horizon again. Airplanes lifted and landed like breaths. Somewhere a decision was putting on its shoes. Motion on the table. The chair by seniority said through the screen, "Removal of Mr. Bryce from the board for cause. Referral to SEC and DOJ. Immediate termination of contracts with Keene and Rowe. Appointment of interim chair." All in favor. Hands in the room. Little hands on screens. A chorus of eyes. Some clipped, one ragged. A single no from a director whose signature sat on too many of Keene's invoices. Majority carried. Agent Carter closed her folder with the tidy finality of a well-made door. "We'll see ourselves out," she said. "You'll get the full scope in the morning." "Agent," Kesha said. Carter paused. "Yes, ma'am." "Don't just chase the consultant," Kesha said. "Find the habit." This didn't start with him. Carter's mouth twitched into something nearly like a smile. "That's the plan." When she was gone, the room shifted as if the removal of a single weight had unbalanced all the others. "The second motion," the chair said carefully. "Temporary suspension of CEO authority pending independent review. 90 days. Appointment of an acting CEO for continuity." Every eye went to Marcus. He met Kesha's without speech. They had been practicing contingency in their bones since the day a uniformed stranger had called their child a disruption. "I'll take the leave," he said. "Voluntary. Put it on record. I'll donate my bonus and accrued stock options for the quarter to fund independent passenger safety audits across the system. We'll call it First Light. It will live outside us. It will audit us without asking permission." Evelyn's eyes softened despite themselves. "Marcus, it's the right thing," he said, "and it's the only thing that looks like the right thing." "Aye," said a director. Another aye. The motion carried like a tide. "The acting CEO," someone asked. 3 names floated in the air and dissolved when they hit the weather. "Evelyn should take it." Marcus said, "She can read a number and hear its subtext." Evelyn looked at Kesha, then at the ceiling, as if to ask a god she didn't believe in whether irony counts as prayer. "I'll accept on one condition," she said. "We hire an external ombuds unafraid to humiliate us." "Kesha, if you want it." Kesha shook her head before the sentence finished. "I can't be your cop and his wife," she said softly. "Every decision would be a conflict to someone. Let First Light be truly independent. Fund it, bind yourselves to it in the charter, and then let me build it outside your reach." "That's a resignation," the chair said, startled. "It's a reallocation." Kesha replied, "From power to leverage." Evelyn studied her face. "You'll lose a lot of say. I'll gain a voice you can't dismiss as house sound," Kesha said. She could feel the sacrifice in the slow ache behind her ribs, and welcomed it. The story had always demanded a price. Park nodded once. "We'll draft the papers. If you fail out loud. If you succeed, you make us better, and everyone else jealous." On the record, the secretary murmured, typing. The decisions became motions. The motions ossified into votes. Words hardened into policy. The room, which had opened like a wound for an hour, began to scab over. When it was over, people stood in the strange quiet that follows any surgery. The view beyond the glass had the deep clarity cities get after rain. A landing light winked far out, and then winked again. Closer. Eveline Lingel. "I didn't know about the shell," she said to Kesha without preamble. "I knew about the spend. I thought it was marketing with better shoes. That's on me. You came around," Kesha said. Evelyn reached into her bag, produced a small black drive. "This is 8 years of settlements, anonymized and filed as customer service budget. If First Light wants to map patterns, start here. If I keep it, I will rationalize it. If I give it to you, I will have to watch it on the news. I don't want to ruin you," Kesha said. "I don't want to be someone who needs to be," Evelyn answered. She put the drive in Kesha's palm and closed her fingers over it. Like a parent teaching a child how not to drop a marble. "I'll take the acting job, not because I want it, because I don't want Leonard's interns doing it." She left. Park gathered papers with an economy learned in courtrooms and airport lobbies. Marcus moved close enough to touch at last and did, his knuckles brushing Kesha's, a contact small enough to be deniable and large enough to hold a life. "You sure?" he asked quietly. "It wasn't about the job. I'm tired of being the story," she said. "I'd rather build the rulebook." He smiled the private smile that had survived all the public ones. "First Light," he said, like he was trying the name on a tongue. "You always did make Dawn look like a decision." They rode the elevator down with a security guard who stared straight ahead the way good guards do. In the lobby, a cleaning crew wheeled a cart past a display of airplane models. The models gleamed like perfect lies. The crew smelled like lemon and honest work. Outside, the rain had moved east to terrify another city. The air held that wet metal scent that means a storm has been and gone and left the world a grade cleaner. A bus hissed to a stop. A family stepped off and rearranged their bags and their evening. Kesha's phone buzzed with a photo from a number she didn't recognize. The image loaded a surgeon's wrist with a blue glove, a cooler in the background with a green seal, a simple caption typed by someone too busy for punctuation. In beating, she showed Marcus. He exhaled without knowing he'd been keeping something in reserve. "That's why," he said. "That's why," she agreed. They didn't go home. They drove to the daycare because routines keep children safe and adults sane. The building's hallways smelled like paste and crackers, and the collective gravity of tiny shoes. A teacher with exhaustion under her eyes and glitter on her sleeve handed Zoe over, warm and heavy and entirely convinced the world was made to be carried. "Was she okay?" Kesha asked. "She likes the song with the hands," the teacher said, demonstrating a clumsy baby sign for more. "She did it at snack time like a CEO closing a deal." Zoe reached for Kesha's face, patting her cheek with the kind of seriousness only infants can muster. Marcus offered his finger and she gripped it with the force of appetite. Little tendons taut with purpose. Outside, the sky had the slate blue that belongs between the last commuter flight and the first red eye. A small bird hopped on the lip of a planter, shook itself, and went still the sparrow again, or one exactly like it. wearing the same modest suit. At the curb, a woman held up her phone. "Mrs. Thompson," she asked, tentative and bold. "I saw earlier what you did. Thank you." Kesha shifted Zoe to one arm. "We had the right people in the right places," she said. "That's all." "You didn't yell," the woman said, a little wonder peeking out. "I would have. I do. I get in trouble." "I used to," Kesha said. She wasn't sure if that was true. She was sure it mattered that the woman believed it could be. Sometimes Kiat travels further. The woman nodded, half smiled, walked away a little taller than she'd arrived. They drove with the windows cracked and the radio low. The airport's runways lay off to the right, lines of firefly lights tracing a patient geometry. An Airbus flashed its strobes and lifted like a thought someone finally dared to finish. In the back seat, Zoe fell asleep on a promise none of them had made out loud. At a red light, Kesha opened her bag and took out the black drive. It was warm. It was heavier than it ought to be for its size. She slid it back in and felt the strap cut a familiar line into her shoulder. The ache was almost comfortable. The cost of 10,000 tiny verifications a day. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Captain Elena Ruiz. A photo taken through a cockpit window. The edge of a cloud like a continent. The world below a map you could fold. Caption 9 minutes. All of them worth it. Kesha typed back. "First light launches tomorrow. You coming to help write the book?" 3 dots. "Always." And then a second message, uncharacteristically sentimental from a pilot known for clean lines and cleaner margins. "Tell your sparrow. We saved a heart." They turned onto their street. A neighbor's porch light came on with the tiny, practical courage of people who keep watch for one another because institutions are slow. Somewhere, a siren started far away and faded. Somewhere an engine spooled for runway, and the sound walked across the night like a memory. On the doorstep, shoes off, bag down, child across a shoulder. Marcus touched the engraving on Kesha's watch, "To my brilliant wife, MT," as if to confirm that the letters still spelled what they had always spelled. "Tomorrow," he said. "Tomorrow," she echoed, and kissed the soft place on Zoe's head where new hair had started like after rain. The baby breathed, "Hush, hush, hush, hush." Kesha stood a moment longer in the doorway and watched the sky. Out beyond the neighborhood and the terminal and the storm, an airplane's landing lights winked twice, then once, then disappeared into routine. She thought of a rule scrawled in a notebook and made into a law by sweat and grit. Verify first, then fly. She thought of a sparrow that doesn't argue with wind. It just angles its body different and keeps going. The hallway clock ticked. The house settled. Somewhere in the city, a boardroom chair rolled back from a table, leaving a permanent scuff somewhere else. A little green seal on a white cooler meant a stranger would wake up. Kesha switched off the porch light and closed the door. In the dark, she could hear it clearly. The small, confident sound the world makes when it goes on, despite everything, a baby's breath, a sparrow's chest. And, far away but perfectly timed, the deep, patient turn of engines taking a runway meant for dawn. This story reminds us that dignity is not about volume, it's about steadiness. When bias, hurry, and groupthink collide, harm spreads fast, especially when good people stay silent. Kesha's calm insistence on facts, verify first, shows a practical way forward in everyday life. Pause, ask, and check before you judge. That rule works at the gate, at work, and at the kitchen table. It's how we break toxic silence without becoming toxic ourselves. For those of us who've lived a few miles of road, the lesson lands simply: Character is what you do when no one is watching, and accountability is what you do once everyone is. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, but it takes courage to open the blinds. Speak up about unfairness, brief, specific, and respectful. Document what you see. Invite allies, and remember, self-respect isn't swagger. It's the quiet decision to stand your ground with grace. You can't pour from an empty cup, so care for yourself as you care for what's right. In relationships and institutions alike, name the patterns, set the boundary, and build better systems. As our elders say, you reap what you sow, verification, empathy, and follow through, and you harvest safety and trust. If this story stirred something anger, hope, questions, tell us. How have you faced unfairness or broken a harmful silence? What helped you keep your dignity when it would have been easier to shout or walk away? Drop a comment, share your own moments, hit like if this resonated, and subscribe so you don't miss more true, high-stakes stories that challenge and uplift. Until next time, may your days be steady, your voice clear, and your nights restful. After the noise, here's to a little peace, a little light, and the quiet strength to meet tomorrow on your terms.